I grabbed Mark's hand in midair and pulled him into the fall with me. The fall tore the air from my lungs, but I forced myself to stay conscious. One slip and we would both hit the rocks below. The officers panicked and called the whole exam to a halt. But stopping meant losing everything I had fought for. Every classmate on the cliffs turned to watch us fall. One wrong move in the trap below and neither of us would walk away. So I erased every fear in my head and became nothing but the fall. The question was how far someone like me could actually go. But I still didn't know why Mark had tried to leave me behind on that cliff in the first place. I only know this because I was told it so many times. A quiet night in the mountains, stars overhead, and then out of nowhere a baby's cries cutting through the dark by a lonely house on the water. The hunter living there figured a rat had snuck in to rob him blind. Unlucky for it, this house belonged to a hunter. He grabbed his axe, ready to end whatever thief had gotten in before it could even fight back, but the house was empty. He almost wrote it off as his mind playing tricks, hearing a baby cry that wasn't there. Then he found me, wrapped in light, wailing on his bed. All he could get out was, "What is this?" His wife rushed in asking what all the noise was. He held me up, still glowing faint, and she went quiet. Neither of them knew where I'd come from or who I belonged to. But looking at each other in that doorway, they made the only call that mattered. I was theirs now, their child. That was the night the wind stirred and the clouds began to gather. The rain after wasn't ordinary. Dried out land turned green and the village sang like they'd been handed a miracle. Whatever power was in me didn't stop there. I kept them fed, kept them safe, drove off anything that came to hurt them. They didn't have the science to explain it, so they just gave it a name, a mage. That's the story anyway. Then my dad caught me reading it. I called out to Dad, arms full of firewood he'd cut himself. Vincent, the hunter who found me that night, never treated me like anything but his own. I asked him straight out what it took to use magic. He laughed, said swinging an axe or loosing an arrow took skill, not magic. Walking through the village, I still caught the whispers. Skinny kid, always in a book, doesn't look a thing like Vincent. Behind me, other kids said my real parents ditched me for being too weird. I saw Dad's fist clench around his axe before he even said my name. A girl nearby swung at a tree, joking it looked like magic. Dad shook off his anger and promised to take me to the city tomorrow for my favorite fruit. I lit up. He never had to say it. I knew whose son I was. About magic I kept thinking all the way to the city. Kriya's, the rural hub of the kingdom of Thormia, spread out below us bigger than anything I'd seen. Dad still had work to finish, so he dropped me at Martin's grandfather's shop and made me promise not to cause trouble. I told him not to worry. Of course I would. At the shop, I wrote out the price signs neat enough that the old shopkeeper complimented my handwriting. He joked that his grandson Martin was the real troublemaker in town, which got Martin protesting right back. Then I asked him straight out what I needed to do to use magic. He laughed it off, said he didn't know much himself, but there were plenty of books on it around town. Vincent left me at a bookstore in Kriya's and told me not to wander. First book I touched had a spread of glowing runes and I lit up until the shopkeeper about took my hand off. Dirty hands, expensive book, no deal. We compromised on cheaper stock, but I couldn't stop wondering where that one came from. Then some well-dressed man showed up and the shop owner practically bowed. I barely got anything out of the books I could afford, nothing that explained a single spell. But when I saw a man hauling crates of books out the door, I had a hunch. I followed him. The trail led me to a gate I had no business standing at. I sat there rereading the one page I'd gotten my hands on when two noblewomen walked past like the street belonged to them. Nobles, what made them different from me? Why were they allowed in and I wasn't? Then a voice called out, "Hey, kid." A guard grabbed my collar before I could answer. Past that gate was noble territory, and a kid alone with no parents in sight looked like trouble, an orphan, maybe an errand boy for thieves. He told me to come with him. I slipped my coat right out of his grip and ran, leaving him holding an empty jacket. I hid until they gave up, caught my breath, and figured I was one stunt from Vincent grounding me for life. Then a pebble skittered past from somewhere above. I climbed up, found a gap in the wall, and heard someone shout about a headmaster putting out fire with his bare hands. This was a magic school. Through the gap, a teacher was quizzing his class. What talent mattered most for learning magic? Wisdom, someone guessed. Effort, another said. Study your whole life. Money, a third joked, and the room laughed. Wrong every time. The answer, he said, was insight. Half the class looked as lost as I felt pressed against that wall. He explained it plain. Magic is a law built into the world, and insight lets you feel that law instead of memorizing it. The same instinct scholars spent lifetimes proving into fact. Cultivate it, he said, and anyone could become a mage. I leaned in so hard I lost my grip on the wall. Caught mid-fall, one thought hit me, just jump. I hit the ground hard enough to know I'd regret it by morning. Scraped up and dazed, I looked up expecting angry guards. Instead, I was staring straight into the academy grounds, students strolling past like nothing happened, and an old bearded man looking right at me. He asked if I'd come to keep him company. That was Milch Alpias, the headmaster. My heart was slamming before I even looked down. Then my grip gave, and the wall dropped away under me. The courtyard and that tree spinning past as I went over the edge, falling with nothing to grab onto. I picked myself up off the ground, alone against that wall, scraped up and out of place. Then Milch Alpias, the headmaster, brought me in himself, and the students under the tree didn't hide what they thought. He isn't a noble, just some lonely commoner. Get out. I want to see magic, I told him. I'd only ever read about it in books, never seen it. That got a laugh out of the nobles, a commoner reading books, imagine that. I didn't care. So Milch raised a hand and called up the wind, and it hit me before I understood what I was even looking at. The gust picked me clean off my feet. 1 second I was standing there, the next I was airborne, arms out, completely out of control, while the other kids howled with laughter like it was the funniest thing they'd seen all week. I was sure I was about to crash face first into the dirt, and I screamed the whole way down. They loved it. So how was it? Milch asked, grinning. That's what magic is. I just knelt there in the grass, shaking, with one thought cutting through everything else. Magic, what actually was it? He started with an example and I cut him off. I didn't want a lesson, I wanted the real answer. The nobles went quiet, scandalized a commoner would talk to the headmaster like that. He just grinned harder. Magic, he said, was logic broken open, a mind chasing a truth that shouldn't make sense. Illogical, but closer to the truth for it. He laughed, asked if that came from the books too. Not exactly, I said. I just noticed a pattern. Every genius mocked for being strange ended up rewriting the rules everyone else lived by. So maybe truth really did hide in the unusual. Then I asked him straight out how I could learn magic myself, but behind that grin, he'd already written me off as disrespectful. Turned out the answer was simple. I was a commoner, so instead of explaining, he showed me. He called a girl shaman into what he called the spirit zone. Her eyes went glowing blue. I've entered it, she said. He held up a fist, asked her to guess the coins inside. 6, correct. A mind sharp enough to sense leaves on the ground from a distance. Just the first of 3 levels. Milch said anyone in the spirit zone could sense the whole world and control it. That clicked with shaman's coin trick. She hadn't counted. She'd felt the whole situation at once. So maybe I could do it too. His method was simple. Find quiet, feel yourself, then erase yourself. Almost nobody managed it, but grinning like I kept surprising him, he told me to try it right there. I stood there and told myself, feel what me actually is. Not the brain, that's just a body part. It was the senses, the reality I felt, the things I couldn't separate from being me. So instead of defining myself, I felt myself, then started erasing it piece by piece. My own existence got harder and harder to hold onto, until there was nothing left but my mind alone. When Milch asked what I felt, the other students were already deep in their own trance under that tree. I only had one honest answer: sound. I'd heard every sound around me at once, layered on top of each other. Milch just laughed it off, I see, but I caught something else on his face after, like he already suspected what that meant. Suddenly I could hear things I'd never caught before, flowers blooming, trees creaking like glass. Milch said if I kept at it, I'd hear even more, then called the class back to school. I followed him, though he lingered, wondering what my talent could have done with a noble's head start. Afterward, alone, I went looking for somewhere quiet enough to keep practicing, and scrambled over a wall to find it. I sat there shaking, teeth gritted, hardly able to believe it. It really worked. It actually worked. I'd done it. I'd found the spirit zone. Then a booming sound roared through me, and the math just changed. This wasn't sound anymore. I felt myself shatter into countless pieces, scattering wide across the entire world, and every piece was still me. Somehow, impossibly, I'd stopped being a person in the world. I'd become the world. The endless vastness of it made me shudder, tears streaking down without me noticing. It only lasted a moment, but I'd broken clean away from my own body. I'd become infinity itself. Then reality snapped back hard. I slammed into someone running full speed down the street, and we both went down in a heap. Sorry, I blurted, scrambling to get the words out. Who do you think you are? They snarled, closing in. Apparently I was that annoying to them. One grabbed my collar. You hit me, he said, now you pay for it. I'm sorry, I said, but sorry meant nothing to him. He just wanted an excuse. Before it went further, someone shouted a name, Lady Amy. My friend was suddenly right there, and behind her stood a striking young noblewoman with red hair, drawing whispers from the whole street. They said I tried to kill him. I didn't even remember bumping into the guy. Didn't matter. The word stopped mattering the second the first punch landed. They wanted my mother dragged out and blamed too, called her worthless for having me. Then something in my eyes must have changed because the next fist came down harder, like they needed to prove a point. Someone finally stepped in and told them to stop before they actually killed me. When I could see straight again, every man who'd been hitting me was already on the ground. She just shrugged it off, said she hadn't done anything. Then she started talking about selling me off to some southern village instead, since a commoner like me wouldn't cause any backlash. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. All I could get out was Mom, Dad, over and over. She looked at me like I was a puzzle, wondering out loud if a slave needed some kind of magical foundation first. Her men laughed and threatened to strip me down to check. I froze until she waved them off, saying she only wanted a good look at my face. Then she asked, dead serious, if I'd gone insane. That's when it happened again, the same break I'd felt back in the academy. My senses split apart and spread out, and suddenly I wasn't just hearing my own world. I was riding a fly landing on some stranger's lip streets away, watching through a crow's eye, feeling a rat's heartbeat in an alley. The whole city was humming, and I was somehow inside every piece of it. Then the noise folded into one thread of blue light shooting straight up, and I wasn't on the street anymore. An old man's voice met me there, calm, like he'd been waiting a long time. He said he'd show me why he'd made this place just for me, and called it his memory. Whatever that meant, I could feel it settling into me. Back on the street, I'd gone somewhere none of them could follow, and the leader wasn't having it. He screamed that I was ignoring him. She tried to shout, wait just a second, before he could touch me again. Then something hit, fast and violent, and his men were suddenly airborne. When the light stopped spinning, I was just me again, blinking like I'd woken up. I looked up and watched grown men get thrown clean off a building, screaming the whole way down. Whatever had gone off, it hit like a shockwave, throwing them into the air and dropping them broken on the pavement. One of them was clutching his leg, begging someone to save him. I just stood there in the wreckage, no idea what had actually happened or if I'd caused it. She rounded on me, demanding to know who I really was, where a commoner had learned magic like that. I didn't have an answer, just pointed and said there'd been some loud sound over there. She didn't wait for more. She tore straight through a wall and shot off with her sword drawn, faster than anyone had a right to move. Something old dragged itself up from wherever memory buries things. People never listened to someone like me, not back then. I heard running feet, a scream, someone shrieking for help, and under it, quieter, the only word that mattered, Dad. This world was harsh, and I was about to remember exactly why. I didn't know her yet, but a girl named Amy was already restless in a house far from mine. Her father grumbled over the paper, still stinging from losing an argument to her, and warned that even a genius who got complacent could get blindsided one day. Then she cut him off cold. Dad, magic, he about dropped the paper. She wanted more than a name in a book. If he knew anyone at a magic school, she told him, introduce them to her. Please, that word cost her something. I'd learn much later. Amy Carmes didn't say please for just anything. Back when I was still a kid, my dad Vincent lived through his own scare with me. I'd walked off for more firewood before the snow even let up. He went after me without a word, and he'd tell people for years that the spring he first brought me to the city, he nearly lost me for good. What actually happened was worse than just getting lost. Here's what actually happened. Alone in the trees with an axe I could barely swing straight, I slipped into something without meaning to. The world sharpened all at once. I didn't have a name for it yet, and once it faded, I couldn't call it back on purpose, not for a long time. Inside it, I could feel the whole tree, its grain, its weight, the exact point it wanted to give. I couldn't explain how, I just could, so I swung. One swing and that tree dropped like lightning, hit it. My dad about swallowed his tongue. Thunderstrike, he called it, an old woodcutter's trick. Find the core of the trunk and hit it dead center, and the whole thing falls in one cut, loud as thunder. I'd landed it on pure instinct, one clean hit out of 100 tries. My dad wasn't satisfied with luck. He wanted me to actually understand what I'd done, so we went back out the next day, and the day after, chasing one good swing in 100, for a chance neither of us could name yet. 3 years of that turned into the person sitting on that stump. I stopped trying to see it through my eyes and just felt it instead. The second I let go, the swing came on its own, and the whole clearing lit up in blue. 3 years into training with Vincent, and sessions like that still hit so hard, I nearly turned around and went home before I'd even finished meditating. 5 hours vanished without me noticing. Every ripple of water, every gust through the leaves, every stray sound in the forest pulled me in deeper, and it still didn't feel like enough time. In the middle of it, that same old man from my vision resurfaced, telling me a different world was waiting for me. Then I shook myself loose and headed home. I got home to find a carriage I'd never seen parked outside, pulled by a pair of white horses too clean for the mountains. Inside, Vincent waved me over to the table. Across from him sat a sharp-eyed old man in glasses who introduced himself as Timurin, an associate of the Austrian family. He said he'd come all this way just to meet me. Timurin studied my face like he was checking for something specific, then froze when he realized I could read. Word of me had traveled further than I thought. He called me sharp for a mountaineer's son, then dropped the real offer. Come sort 10,000 books in the Austrian family's library, some of it knowledge the public could never see. 2 years starting now. Timurin spelled out the real stakes. Only my family and he would know the project existed, and one leaked page would cost my whole family our lives, not just mine. He offered pay beyond anything a hunting season could bring. Vincent cut in fast, insisting money wasn't the point. He just wanted me to chase my own dream. One man at the table burst out laughing at Vincent, calling out the obvious. He bragged I could read, but never meant for me to actually use it. So which dream had he been lying to me about? Nobody there knew the truth. Alina taught me a few letters just for fun, and by 6 I was already reading on my own. I didn't know it yet, but Vincent's mind was spiraling. What if I had noble blood and his house was the only thing keeping me from real schooling? He caught himself I was his son, and a mountaineer's son learns the mountains. But once I started working the slopes, it scared him enough that, years before, he'd gone to his knees begging someone else to take me on as a reader instead. That memory didn't end quietly. Someone finally shouted, "Let him read some books." The man across from Vincent, calm and sharp-dressed, waved off any payment and admitted that if he'd known how things would turn out, he never would have come begging Vincent in the first place. That was enough. Vincent exploded, screaming at him to get out of the house right then. In my father's memory, he turned down the man's money flat, and when the guy sneered at him for it, he threw him out of his own house with his bare hands. Behind him, the son begged his father to reconsider, then said it himself, "I'll do it." The vision let go right as my name rang out. My friends had heard, and they weren't calm about it. I promised my father I'd never leak a word, blame or no blame. Timurin laid the real terms bare. He'd fetch me in a week, and until then I could still walk away, but once I stepped inside that manor, there was no leaving until the job was done. A friend called it madness. I just thanked my father for the gift. My father crushed me into a hug, telling me not to worry, that he'd never let anyone lay a finger on our family, that I'd better come back safe. Nearby, a woman quietly wiped her tears and asked, almost to herself, if she'd finally raised me well. I carried that with me through the week that followed, right up to the day I actually had to go. Papers came out, my father's signature going down with a hand that shook, and it was final. The contract signed, no turning back. Timurin didn't let it linger, time's ticking, let's go, and my luggage went straight into the carriage. The second I sat inside across from those 2 escorts, alone, my mind slipped somewhere else entirely, a hand reaching for me, and the words mother, father, from a memory I couldn't place. The memory faded on a hand glowing with magic, reaching for something I still couldn't name, and then the carriage jolted me back to the road under me. I told myself not to be shaken. This was the chance of a lifetime, but a double-edged one. 2 years locked inside a house full of people with real power. The only question that mattered, could I actually survive it? Timurin filled the ride with family history. The Austrian family had produced official swordsmen for generations, and the current head, Bishop Austrian, was a 4th-class knight who ran the real power in Krias. Then he pointed out the window at their pride, the tree-lined road called the Great Walkway. I said, "Wow." One escort laughed that I was already scared. "Watch your mouth," another warned, "or lose his neck." We were still walking when it hit me that this was real, not just a plan anymore. The gate finally opened onto the 2nd-class noble estate itself, the Austrian family seal cut right into the stone by a fountain with a rearing horse statue. A butler met us at the entrance, promising to walk me through my duties personally. I told him I'd do my best. The great library of the Austrians opened up in front of me, more books than I'd ever seen in one place. My job, sort them all before the move to the new library, working off a fresh list each week, 9 to 6. Free after that, but not to leave the grounds, and the manor stayed off limits without permission. Worth risking my life for, I thought. When do I start? Tomorrow. I spent that first stretch just staring down 10,000 books, working out how one person sorts them without losing his mind. Take a title like the history of swordsmanship. One person files it under combat, another under general history, and both are right. That's when it hit me. Every book traces back to one shared line. Find that line and the whole library organizes itself. History was the backbone. Learn the timeline first and everything else slots in faster. So I read every night I could, chasing that plan for the full 2 years ahead of me. A voice caught me mid-page and my stomach dropped, but it wasn't the vice butler I dreaded. It was Bishop Ostjen himself, asking if I was organizing well, working overtime again. I told him yes. He told me not to rush, that I'd answer for it myself if I pushed too hard, and I promised I wouldn't. Then out of nowhere, he grabbed my collar and asked straight out if he'd caught me reading on the clock. He hadn't this time, but the warning landed cold. Butlers, the family head, even the young masters walked through that library. Keep my uniform sharp, don't embarrass the Ostjen name, and cut my hair. Alone again, I let out a breath. Staying out of trouble for 2 years, that was the easy problem. The real one was sitting on the desk in front of me. 7 kingdoms, dynasties, names piled on names. I couldn't just memorize this. If I wanted to pull any of it up on demand, I had to actually understand every event, not cram it. So I picked one line and started there. Ostjen caught me holding the same book for a full month and couldn't hide the eye roll. Did I really think studying would get me anywhere? Then he said the part that mattered. If I'd been digging into practical spellbooks instead, he'd have banned me from the library outside work hours entirely. That was the relief. I fell asleep at my desk that night. Call me an idiot. I was still dreaming big. 3 months went by in a blink. Sorting got easier once I found the rhythm, and I started picking up things the butlers let slip. The second young master kept borrowing books he never returned, and nobody above cared. If anything went missing, the butlers answered for it, not him. One of them told me straight the truly important books weren't even in the library, and to keep that conversation to myself. Good advice, didn't make me any safer. Somewhere behind all of it sat a threat I couldn't unhear. Cross the wrong line and I'd be killed, no mistakes allowed. So I decided the smart move was to mind my own business and stay quiet. Right on cue, a kid came skidding down the hall, cursing some old man out, begging for 1 day of rest, blue hair. I placed him instantly, Ostjen Ryan, the youngest of the family, asking me not to breathe a word he was here. A minute later, a wall of a man came storming through, yelling Ryan's name, certain the brat was hiding close by. He turned on me next. Had I seen a scrawny blue-haired kid come through? I played dumb and asked who exactly he thought he was. Turned out he was the swordmaster, the one paid to beat discipline into Ryan, and he wasn't in the mood to be messed with. I already knew. Ryan was curled up under my desk the whole time. His teacher found him anyway, dragged Ryan out by the collar, upside down, deaf to every plea about misunderstandings, swearing he'd beat some sense into him personally. Ryan kept screaming threats the whole way out. I was the one who told the teacher where he was hiding. The man held the family's authority, and lying to him wasn't an option. Ryan didn't resurface for a month. While Ryan was gone, I buried myself in the Ostjen library. The first book took 20 days to truly understand. After that, I tore through 82 more, then 200, watching magic's whole shape shift the deeper I dug into history. For a while, I doubted the method. Then I read what the old magicians actually did, and the doubt died. Magicians were scholars first. It hit me while I reread the theory. Ordinary mages can't force their way into the spirit zone, but if I stacked enough information under mine, I might actually become a real magician. That's when the shouting started. Ryan was back, tearing down the hall half-dressed, screaming that he'd endured hell for this day. He hadn't come to talk. He wanted me to know what he'd survived. Cliffs climbed on shaking arms, certain he'd die, running on nothing but the thought of paying me back. I told him I hadn't lied, just told the young master the truth. He didn't want truth. He wanted someone to cover for him, and I wasn't that person. To him, I was just a butler who didn't matter enough to fight. He caught the look on my face and decided it meant I was looking down on him. "Follow me," he said. "I'll show you what kind of man I am." He walked me out to the orchard under a full moon. My plan was simple: take whatever he threw and never throw a punch back. I couldn't risk the one chance my family bled for. Then something flew at me. "Take this." It landed in my hands before I understood. A wooden sword. "Let's duel," he said. "I'm not a coward like you." He swore he'd become the greatest swordsman in the world and make me his first win on the way there. I told him I'd only done my job the way a butler should. He heard it as an insult, and I watched his eyes change. "Come at me," he said, and offered me 3 free strikes first. That's how sure he was of the gap between us. I saw it in his eyes. Whatever training he'd survived on that mountain had turned him into someone who could shatter bone with a stick. My mind blanked. What could I even do? Then I stopped thinking and swung with everything I had. It connected. One. He staggered back, genuinely rattled by how much that hit carried. I didn't let up, swung again, and this time our weapons met dead on, wood cracking against his blade. He laughed it off, called it two, asked if I'd ever even held a sword before. Maybe not, but I only had 1 strike left, and I already knew where I was putting it. I told him let's go and put everything into the 3 free strikes he'd handed me. Thunder Strike landed once, twice, 3 times, and every time he flinched instead of just tanking it, admitting it was harder to not block than he'd expected. Then his jaw cracked into a grin. "Now it's my turn," he said. His wooden sword came down for real, and I barely had time to react. Wood cracked and split in the air right in front of my face, and for a second all I could do was stare, wide-eyed, wondering if I'd just made a fatal mistake letting him go all in. He swung again, and his blade shattered against mine on contact. I stood there, gasping, hand aching around the broken hilt. My gamble had worked. I'd sensed his first strike, calculated his rhythm on the second, and on the third I finally landed it clean. Someone stepped in and asked where I'd learned swordsmanship. I told him straight this wasn't swordsmanship, it was Thunder Strike. Ryan's jaw dropped. My father worked the mountains, and I'd followed him cutting timber, too weak to fell trees the normal way, so the lumberjacks taught me this instead. 15 years with a blade, and he still couldn't accept it. What I didn't know yet was what he'd gone through to get here. His instructor had marveled that a 12-year-old already commanded sword slaughter, Ostjan's secret technique, with nothing left to teach him. His family threw him a banquet over it, toasting their genius son. Alone after, all he could ask himself was why he still couldn't catch up. A servant flinched just saying his name. "I won't acknowledge this," Ryan screamed, then snapped at the man to shut up before he could finish a sentence. He went quiet for a moment, then he turned back to me, held something out, and said simply, "Take this." He told me if I'd already mastered sword slaughter, I deserved to be treated like a real opponent, real swords, 1 month from now, same place. All I could think was that I might actually die. A servant begged him to reconsider, said I'd never held a sword in my life. Ryan didn't care. He just told me not to think about running. I promised myself I'd surpass him. Then I dug into the palace archives to learn exactly who I was up against. The Ostjan bloodline ran black and blue hair through every generation. Bishop Ostjan's 3 sons and 1 daughter, all prodigies, his eldest a 6th-class swordsman, his daughter a pianist who'd walked from the blade, his second son Ryan a genius too. What I learned later was that Ryan couldn't let the loss go. He'd knocked me down out of confidence and lost anyway, and that ate at him worse than losing ever could. Alone in his room, he made a decision, no more coasting. He was going to become a real swordsman. The training that followed wasn't training, it was punishment. Ryan screamed through every rep, tore past 100 laps faster than the record on the wall, and his own instructor stood there stunned. His body should have broken. It didn't, and even Ryan couldn't explain why. Still on his feet, Ryan asked if there was anything worse than this. Nothing happened, he lied, but his teacher caught it instantly. Ryan had cracked open schema, the swordsman's counterpart to my spirit zone, a technique for seizing total command over every cell in the body. "Bring it on," Ryan said. Schema, I realized, was the exact opposite of my spirit zone. Where I erased myself to sense the world, schema meant digging into my own body to command it. I tried it myself and found a black veil wrapped around my own aura I recognized. 3 years ago, a girl I'd met carried that same veil. She'd been a schema user all along. I decided to build my own swordsmanship on the spirit zone, starting with the 8 basic directions of the slash. First strike from above. While I drilled alone, Ryan kept pushing past every limit his teacher set, screaming through reps meant to break him, furious his arms wouldn't just snap already. What ate at Ryan wasn't the pain, it was that schema still wouldn't answer on command. His teacher finally called the session off. That night by the fire, Ryan admitted his arms hurt like hell, and his teacher told him something he'd never said before. He'd never once rated Ryan as talented. His teacher pushed further. Geniuses know they're geniuses, so their effort only confirms what they already believe. The real enemy of genius is a will that keeps swinging at something everyone says can't be done. Of every comforting thing anyone had told Ryan, that one hit hardest, and he made his choice right there. Ryan's face split into a fierce grin. "I'll win for sure," he swore to no one but himself. Somewhere else, so did I, fist closed tight around the same promise. 1 month until our duel, and neither of us planned on losing it. What I only understood afterward was how Ryan spent that month. His hands were raw, wrapped in bandages, and he told himself he just had to endure until he won. His whole method came down to one idea. A real attack could only ever come from 8 directions, so alone, night after night, he drilled blocking every one of them. Every rep looked the same, 1 attack, 1 block from a different angle each time. He never paused to catch his breath between them. He just said next and started the following one over and over until 8 directions became instinct instead of counting. Before he ever raised his sword, Ryan had already said goodbye to his parents in his head. Sorry, I might not come back, but I've seen a world as infinite as magic, no regrets. Then torches lit the clearing and we faced off. Let's begin, he said, to think in just 1 month. I felt an aura roll off him I hadn't expected. In his head I could tell he was still hearing his old teacher doubt he'd ever really learned swordsmanship. If he truly matched some genius named Kai, that was reason enough to hit harder, he decided, and charged screaming, "Here I go." All I could think was, that swordsmanship is incredible. He was operating on a completely different level than me. I couldn't picture what came next, but I could feel it, his sword path, clear as sound. He caught me watching his blade that closely and snarled. Is he actually scared of it? Funny thing was, he was the one who couldn't shake the fear of death alone. Its roots are in the future, he told himself, and the future is just an illusion that doesn't exist yet. Sure, any fool can jump off a cliff, he thought. That's not the same as real resolve against death. It's like he's shut his emotions off completely. Then out loud, I don't fear death either. He came in fast. My gut screamed on the right. I turned, and his blade still caught me. Even if you struggle, he said, watching me stagger. There's always a wall. Cheap tricks can't get you past, he told me, and kept swinging. His blade was heavy, yet somehow still fast enough to keep me guessing. Worse, synesthesia itself was starting to fail me. His attacks were getting harder to feel coming at all. So instead of waiting for the next one, I closed the gap myself and swung first. Shit, his blade was already coming down and I couldn't get out of the way in time. I actually thought I'm about to die, so I screamed and threw everything I had into the clash anyway. The impact tore the ground open between us. From the sidelines, someone muttered, "That's strange. How is that even possible?" "Have you realized it now?" I asked, watching him freeze. That crest sword style he'd copied was built for a blade twice the size of his. No wonder he couldn't land it clean. He charged anyway, screaming that raw strength would crush me. It didn't. Mid-swing I caught it. His footwork after the strike was borrowed knowledge with no feel underneath it. He had the skills down cold, but none of the instinct to use them right, so I changed the read. I'd bait him, make him think my next move was smaller than it was. He caught something in my eyes and called it too. Change of plans, he said, and came in swinging with everything he had. Basic slashes, nothing fancy, nothing wasted. But I'd built the rhythm so he couldn't read where the next one landed, and every time he tried to block, he was already late. My grip was screaming and I had to hide it, mask the strain and keep the tempo even. Around us the crowd stopped believing their eyes. "No way," someone kept saying. "No way." Something changed in his face mid-swing, like an old promise had just resurfaced, a vow to become the greatest swordsman alive, whatever grudge or shame was driving him. I didn't know the story, I just felt the difference in his blade. What I managed as his next strike came in a place I hadn't guarded. For a second I thought he'd stopped trying to win, just swinging on pure force with no plan behind it. Then I understood. His sword path had gone invisible to me, not slower, not sloppier, unpredictable. He screamed and came in, and for the first time all fight, I couldn't call where it was headed. Too many angles at once, I couldn't read a single one clean. He screamed like it cost him everything to keep swinging that fast, and for one bad heartbeat I lost the read completely. Then it landed. When it ended, his sword stood planted in the ground between us, and neither of us said anything for a while. We were both bleeding, both quiet. Something like this, I thought, replaying it. Standing thereafter, one thought kept nagging at me. Was that last moment even possible? In that last second he stopped attacking and struck straight up, catching me clean. What kind of guy pulls that off? Honestly, I hadn't expected to win, and beating a noble's son meant trouble now that his sword was broken. Then he dropped to his knees. "Damn it, I lost," he said again. "Nothing to say if you kill me for it. You won," I told him. Ryan was still gasping for air, and all I could get out was, "Are you joking?" Then it hit me why he'd fought like that. A memory surfaced of his own butler screaming that killing his young master in a duel would get the butler killed, and young Ryan screaming back that hiding behind loyalty was garbage. It ended with him howling loyalty my ass and getting called a bastard for it. That old grudge closed, and I was back watching Ryan catch his breath, half delirious. He couldn't get over that I hadn't mocked him the way that genius Kai always did. I just clashed with him for real, no games. Then he looked up at me through the blood, grinning, and asked for my name. He said my name back like he was testing it, then gave me his, Austin Ryan. I didn't get the sudden shift from rivals to this, but he just stuck his hand out. "Let's be friends, how about it?" Time moved on from there, and the next thing I knew, I was standing outside the Austin family's own library. A year in, my supervisor said I'd made good progress, and he was right. Of the 850 history books I meant to finish, only 250 were left, 3 a day my new pace. My swordsmanship and spirit zone stamina had grown too, taught by nearly dying more than once. Then Ryan wandered in, staring at the shelves, wondering if his own family had read all of these. I told him yes, actually, the family head and his second son were regulars. Ryan just groaned about how nice it must be to be smart. Up close he was built like a wall, but acted nothing like one, warm and teasing, every bit the baby of the family. When I begged him not to wreck a book, he yelped, then laughed that no book was worth more than a life. Ryan couldn't sit still, whining that he was bored, swinging an invisible sword at nothing. 10 minutes later he asked why a swordsman in training needed so many books. I told him straight, I'd never gotten the chance to study before I got here, so I was making up for lost time. Watching me tear through pages, the kid who'd walked in acting untouchable now sounded almost humble. I'd picked up a book that opened with an old question: if a swordsman and a mage ever clashed, who would win? I called it dry, pointless, nothing real about swordsmanship in it. Ryan laughed, asked how I could judge from one page, then got curious himself, so who did win a fight like that? Before either of us answered, a voice cut in. Of course the swordsman would win. The butler bowed low, welcome, second young master, and I realized the stranger was Ryan's own older brother. Ryan froze, half panicked he'd been overheard bad-mouthing books. His brother, calm, book in hand, teased that a servant and a noble caught talking that easily never ends lightly. When Ryan laughed it off, he just said the real answer was already sitting on the shelves, in how the library filed swordsmen against mages. Ryan scoffed that location wouldn't change a fight's outcome. Then his brother rounded on me, wanting to know if I was ignoring him. I gave it to him straight. He laid out a theory. Close the gap fast enough and a swordsman kills a mage before a spell forms. Then he killed his own idea. Wrong, he said. The mage loses, that was the verdict, and it hit harder than I expected. This was Ostjin Kai, Ryan's older brother, the one who'd apparently made a habit since he was a kid of crushing whatever someone else treasured. Now he was quoting the 5 great generals' memoir and some ancient relic built to blind a mage spirit zone. Anti-magic, he called it. A mage spirit zone was our one edge, the thing that let us fight like sharks circling in open water, sensing everything around us. Anti-magic didn't kill the shark, it just drained the water out from under it, took away every sense it had to hunt with. No spirit zone, no magic, simple as that, where the right relic and no mage could touch you, but that only held up to a point. Anti-magic was ancient, forged from a dragon's heart, and no amount of gold pushed its efficiency past 65%, even for the best crafter alive, a man called Vaxa. So what actually made a swordsman untouchable? A mage built it. Mages like that sell out their own kind's weaknesses for a price, Kai said, pathetic in his words. Ryan told him he was being too harsh. I didn't flinch. That's what a mage is, I said back. He blinked, surprised. Then he admitted the truth cut both ways. Anti-magic hurt mages, but a mage built it and profited off it too. Idealism and reality are different things, he said. Doesn't change the fact a mage loses to a swordsman. I let out a breath once he walked off, thought I was going to die in there. Then Ryan burst out laughing, said I was the best, that he'd never seen Kai make that face before. Said my tongue was sharp enough to be a sword itself. I just felt drained. I only found out later what happened up in the estate offices. The head butler was going over the numbers, stunned the library reorganizing got pushed forward by 6 months, work that was supposed to take 20 years. He wondered aloud if it was a shame to let someone that useful go, floated extending my contract, then caught himself. He just murmured my name to himself, Shiren Aryan. Reading the last book felt like a dream I'd been chasing for 2 years. Then Ryan barreled in yelling my name, asking if I'd really gone through everything. Nothing left to read, at least not here, I told him. He lost it, laughing, pulling me into a hug, saying I actually did it. I turned to him. Ryan, I said before I go. I finally asked Ryan if I could visit his house. He about fell over. We'd spent a whole year meeting only in the library, so the question caught him off guard. Once he got over the shock, he lit up. His whole family happened to be out that day. We left right then, and I found myself standing outside the Ostjin estate in the winter cold, staring up at it. Walking up, I joked that sneaking through the front door felt like a crime. Don't worry, Ryan said, only the servants were around. The estate was so massive, one room alone looked bigger than my childhood home. He led me to the far end of the hallway and threw open his door. His room was small next to the rest, more training lodge than noble's bedroom. Welcome, he said. Ryan dealt out cards and I cleaned him out hand after hand. He slammed the table, sure I'd cheated somehow. I hadn't. He gives away an ace by how he sets it down, and he bets at a different speed depending on whether his hand is any good. He wasn't hiding anything, he just didn't know what he was showing. Don't fixate on small tells, I told him, read the whole picture instead, the same instinct my spirit zone runs on. Ryan latched onto that, wondering if a schema could sharpen his reads too. Time got away from us until a piano drifted through the halls. Only one person in the house played like that, Ryan said, his older sister, the court pianist. The pianist was Rena Ostjen, Ryan's older sister and the estate's court pianist, and she caught us listening at the door. She sized me up on the spot, guessing right that I was the one who'd cataloged the library in a year, and asked if I'd ever played piano before. I kept my guard up. Ryan had warned me once that of his family, his sister had the nastiest personality. Then I'll teach you, she said, patting the bench beside her. Pardon, you want me to sit there? That wasn't a request I saw coming. I repeated Ryan's warning to myself. Don't let your guard down, not even once. This is supposedly the scariest Ostjen in the house. She just smiled past my hesitation and patted the seat again. It's fine, she said. No one's going to scold you. I already said you could sit there. I didn't have much choice after that. She walked me through the keys, do re mi, showed me the symbol on the score and had me press 3 notes together. It came out better than I expected, and she said so. I asked to try it once through. Go ahead, she said, warning me not to expect much on a first try. I played anyway, and for a second the nastiest personality in the house looked impressed. I sat down and just played, matching every note Rihanna had struck a moment before. She winced, said it was all wrong technically, and almost stopped me. Then she caught something she didn't expect. Wrong as it was, it matched her exactly, note for note. My hand lit up blue on the keys, like it had found a current running straight through her music. The sound kept sharpening, more accurate with every measure, until Rihanna admitted this wasn't really a performance, not technically, but somehow it had the essence of one. She stared at me like she couldn't believe someone doing library work could play like that. My face went red, and I started apologizing before she even asked. Ryan burst in yelling that the piano was too damn noisy, telling Rihanna to quit acting like a crazy woman, not noticing I was sitting right there. Then he spotted me and froze. I panicked, stammering that I could explain, and Rihanna asked if we knew each other. Ryan blurted that I was his friend. That threw her completely. Rihanna asked my name outright. Cheyenne, I told her, and only then did it click for her that I was the one who'd played through the door, not some stranger. The ice cracked instantly. She dropped it to grill Ryan about lying to her instead. He warned me she was a vampire and I shouldn't trust the warmth, but she just called him immature and told me she was glad he had a friend like me. Rihanna needled Ryan about handing his sister off to me, and he lost it, chasing me around swinging while I yelped that I didn't understand nobles. Then Rihanna asked why he'd come home mid-vacation at all. The answer landed heavy. He was here for the official qualification exam tomorrow. Did things really go that far already, I thought. I learned the shape of it fast. Alpia's graduates could pick up an unofficial 10th class rank, but the official exam was different, recognized across the whole continent, and out of thousands who tried, maybe 30 ever passed. Ryan was taking it at 18, royal backing, family support, a different world entirely. Rihanna left to handle dinner, we traded addresses, and Ryan asked, almost quiet, if we'd really meet again. Probably, I said. Ryan asked out of nowhere if Rihanna had a boyfriend. I said no, and he told me to forget he'd even asked. Then he cupped his hands and screamed it across the whole estate anyway, that I'd asked if she had a boyfriend, just to watch her lose it in front of everyone. Rihanna turned red in front of the entire staff and waved it off as kids fooling around before ordering everyone back to work. I never saw what happened next myself, but somewhere else in that house, Bishop Ostjen was asking his head butler Hans if my friend's guest had shown up. No appointment, Hans said. Then Bishop Ostjen caught sight of me from a distance, and my name finally clicked into place for him. He gave one order, get Timur into his room right now. What I didn't know yet was that while I knelt in that courtroom, Ryan was 2 mountains away, drilling swordwork in the snow. A servant burst through the trees begging him back for his sister. Ryan waved it off until the servant blurted the real reason. My name, in danger, may be dying. He didn't wait to hear more. He swore his father would forgive me the second he understood we were friends, and bolted for the estate. His swordmaster stepped into his path and said 2 words, "You can't go." Ryan froze and for the first time called the old man teacher like a plea instead of a title. Back at the estate, they'd already gathered everyone who mattered to watch. I knelt in the middle of that hall in my butler's coat while Bishop Ostjen said my full name out loud like a verdict already decided. Arian Cheyenne. Then he said the only word that mattered, executed. The reason traced back to head butler Louis, who'd filed a report straight to the patriarch about who I really was to Ryan. Ryan begged his swordmaster to let him go smooth things over himself. The old man cut him off cold. No, something in how he said it made Ryan go quiet. The hall buzzed with the same appalled whisper. A commoner and a noble, friends. Bishop Ostjen figured I simply didn't know my place. That's when Rena cut through the crowd, papers in hand, asking her father for a few minutes and holding up a file from the head butler. Statements from countless employees about how they'd actually been treated. They asked if I had anything to say. I didn't ask for mercy. I asked what would happen to Ryan if word got out we were friends. The nobles sneered that I should be grateful just to be breathing. Bishop Ostjen sneered too. How dare you ask a question? I told him straight, Ryan and I have been friends for over a year. And we'll keep being friends, I said, and Bishop Ostjen just smiled like the word meant nothing to him. He turned to Louis. Handle him quickly, quietly. That's when Ryan shoved through the doors, shouting for his father to wait. The answer came back ice cold. The order was already given, and it wasn't getting reversed for one person's sake. Says who? Ryan dropped straight down into the middle of them, demanding to know who'd sentence his friend without asking him first. Louis answered flat, it is I. Ryan screamed that I'd done nothing worth dying for, that I'd only become his friend. Louis didn't blink. Nobility doesn't need a reason, just permission. Kneeling there waiting for the blade, I heard Ryan scream that friendship wasn't some benefit you could grant or revoke. Bishop Ostjen wasn't buying it. To him, a noble's bond with a commoner was just someone angling to leech off a family name. He demanded proof, real proof, that I was actually Ryan's friend. All I could think was, how did I get dragged into this? What I only learned later was that Ryan was panicking too. He knew that if he admitted he couldn't prove it, I was dead. So he reached back into something I'd told him once, about reading people not by their small habits but by taking them in as a whole. He decided to use it on his own father. He read him whole, and what came back wasn't just a father losing his temper. It was a fourth-class knight, head of a royal-line noble house, standing there with everything that title carries. This wasn't a family spat, it was the real deal. To understand how Ryan got back to the mansion in time, I have to rewind half an hour to a mountain and a shout of master. 30 minutes earlier, up in the snow, Ryan begged his swordmaster to let him go. The old man refused, called me a commoner, said the friendship was reckless. Ryan threw the old man's own lesson back at him. If you can cross swords with someone, you can be their friend. His master wasn't moved. Nobility exists to protect the family, and Ryan had thrown that away on someone worth less than a fly. I don't want to be a coward, Ryan said. That got to the old man, who admitted he liked that reckless, honest look in his eyes. Then he held out a sword. Take it to the mansion, but if you're not fully committed, don't move from this spot. Ryan took it. His master's parting line, throwing away a friend is like throwing away yourself. Sword in hand, Ryan marched back and laughing in his father's face. You almost had me, but no, proof of our friendship, that he existed at all, he said. His father wasn't amused. This wasn't some father-son spat, he said. The whole family's standing was cracking, and he'd disown his own son before he let that happen. Rena screamed for him to stop. Then I'll gladly leave, Ryan said, and his father ordered the guards to draw on him. Prove your friend is real with your life right here. Ryan drew his own sword instead. His father froze. Ryan said it wasn't against him, just proof of what he believed. His father sneered that I was just a prop to make him feel better. Ryan answered flat, this time you're wrong. Ryan said I was above his level, that all he wanted was to help me climb higher. His father called him deluded, and the nobles muttered that a noble befriending a commoner was madness. Ryan cut off anyone trying to speak for me. He turned to me and said it plain. He'd known since the day we became friends that it might cost him his life. Even if he died, he said, he wouldn't regret it. Ryan's blade came up and he said it straight to his father's face. Even disowned, we'd still be friends. Bishop Ostjen's jaw locked like the words were an insult. Someone nearby murmured something about honest friends being rare and precious. Then a huge laugh cracked over all of it. Grandfather, Ryan shouted, and I realized someone had been watching us the whole time. He looked at us like he hadn't laughed that hard in years. Youth really is the best, he said. This stranger had walked into the middle of my execution and turned it into the funniest thing he'd seen in his old age. I had no idea yet how much weight his opinion actually carried. That laugh didn't fade fast. It just hung there over the whole hall while the rest of us stood frozen, catching our breath, because none of us knew yet what he was actually going to decide about me and Ryan. Turned out the man laughing loudest was Ostjen Klump, the family's previous patriarch, a general of Thodness and a certified Class 3 swordsman. He said this was more fun than home ever was. Then he said he'd been listening a while and wanted everyone's opinion of me before deciding anything. Rena went first, calling me sharp and talented after meeting me only once. Bishop Ostgen admitted I'd been honest through the whole contract and was leaving that same day anyway, so where was the dishonor in that? Clump turned to Rai next, the second grandson being groomed to inherit. Rai brushed it off, said my fate wasn't his problem, insisted he just wanted to be excused so he could focus on his own exam for the kingdom. Timurin was called up next, the butler who'd handed me my library job in the first place. He said servants don't offer opinions, only carry out their master's will, then did it anyway. 6 months ahead of schedule, every task done to perfection. Pressed on whether he knew we were friends, he said a careless kid couldn't have sorted 10,000 books without a single mistake. Rena said the room had tipped in my favor, and even Bishop Ostgen admitted his father was the only face at that table that never gave anything away. Then Clump killed it flat. No, he believed we were friends, he said, but it ended here tonight because keep it going and it becomes a rumor, and a rumor becomes a weakness our enemies grab onto. Ryan went silent, jaw locked. Clump kept going, said he understood the feeling, but the family answered for too many lives to risk it on one friendship, then turned straight to me. Could I let Ryan go just like that? I couldn't lie and say yes. I told him I'd vanish the moment I became a real danger to Ryan, but I wasn't giving up our friendship. I'd told Clump I'd walk away from Ryan myself if I ever became a threat. That was supposed to settle it. But watching me say that felt wrong to Ryan, ashamed his family had ever put a price on our friendship. So he grabbed his sword and dropped to one knee. This was never up for renegotiation. I hereby swear, he said, and I had no idea what he was about to bind himself to. Don't do it, I shouted, because I still didn't know what he was planning. Too late. Ryan raised his sword and swore himself right there in front of his whole family. I, Ostgen Ryan, third son of Ostgen, swear to become the sword of Shiren starting this moment. Bishop Ostgen's face went white, then red. Fucking crazy bastard was all he could get out. I didn't grasp it yet, so here's the shorthand. Centuries back, when Thormia was stitched together from a dozen warring nations, the first king, Adolf, let defeated houses keep their titles if they swore their swords to a master. Break that oath and you drop to the lowest noble rank in the kingdom. Ryan had just staked his family's entire standing on me. How about now, he said. You can't revoke this, right? Bishop Ostgen grabbed Ryan by the collar, demanding to know what he'd done. Clump turned the question on me instead. If Ryan wanted to be my sword, I'd better have earned it. Was it my talent or Ryan's stupidity? I didn't flinch. A sword doesn't judge, I told him. It only protects. Clump lost it laughing, calling Ryan's madness the mark of a real heir. Out on the estate's great walkway, Clump wouldn't stop laughing about it. He told Ryan to just wear the oath proudly, then turned to me. Not sharpened enough yet, he said, but I wouldn't be the sword that cuts its own master's foot. Take care of my grandson. I thanked him for his permission. Then he ordered the staff to bring me home properly this time. I honestly couldn't fathom these nobles. Back in his room, Ryan couldn't stop laughing about his family's faces. I asked why he'd throw a knight's oath at something like our friendship. He got serious. I was different from his brother, he said. I pulled people in, and he'd simply decided to put his life in my hands. Then Rena walked in and needled him over it until he went red and told me I'd better try harder to protect him. Rena sprawled across her bed like she owned the room and admitted she'd fed their father classified intel on a rival house just to grease this whole thing through. Now father and grandfather were talking about enrolling both of us at the Kaizen Swordsmanship Academy, she said, and she'd already vouched for how talented I was. Ryan exploded, whining he just wanted to play with me, so she yanked his cheek for it. Ryan wasn't done. Shiren isn't going to the Swordsmanship Academy, he shouted. He's an aspiring mage. He's already reached his spirit zone. Rena went still. Wait, she said, that means you lost to an aspiring mage. In swordsmanship, what kind of knight is worse than his own master? Ryan's face went scarlet. Get out right now, he screamed at her, you freaking witch. I laid it out for them. I'd read Ryan's movements through the synesthesia inside my spirit zone, and that's what won the match. Rena called it brilliant, impressed the density held up even mid-swing. Ryan just went quiet and read. He said he'd take my case to his grandfather himself. Then someone dropped it casually. Instructor Kite had already ended his contract that morning. My hand tightened on the hilt. Instructor. While I caught my breath, my father was already climbing the road to the estate, though I didn't know it yet. A butler told me my family had arrived and waited in the reception room. Ryan didn't hesitate, said he'd come too, and took the stairs so fast the staff panicked. He told them to drop the formality around him. They refused flat, joked their necks were on the line. I burst through the door and didn't slow down, mother, father, and threw myself into their arms. Vincent's first words had gotten thin. I told them we'd been eating fine, just worried sick without me. Then came the real question, why call them all the way out here if my work was already done? Was I a prisoner? Of course not, I said. I'd landed a good opportunity. He didn't believe it. He turned on me. I'd befriended a noble at the library, and that noble swore a knight's oath to keep me. Be honest, he said, then exploded. A smart kid like me wouldn't fall for a delusion. Someone must have put me up to it. I swore it was true. Someone murmured this was why a kid never comes back the same from a noble's house. Then the family head walked in. Bishop Austin, Ryan's father, introduced himself to my parents. Ryan went formal for once. I am Ryan, Shiren's blade. Rihanna introduced herself too. My parents nearly fainted, stammering that they were just Shiren's parents. How could someone this important be standing here? Someone said, "Oh, hadn't Shiren told you the news?" Vincent's face went white. That whole story was true. No way, no way. My mother leaned over and whispered, "Honey, there are so many forks." Then Vincent set his tea down and said what he'd been chewing on all night. A family this famous doesn't roll out a banquet for a lumberjack's son with nothing to offer. He was grateful and honestly unsettled by it. Bishop Austin admitted the same discomfort, but said treating me coldly over class would rob Ryan of his pride. Bishop Austin promised honorific titles for me from now on and said the family would back me without hesitation. Vincent finally relaxed. Then Austin got to his real point. My spirit zone wasn't something you could grind your way into, it was pure talent. Since I wanted to be a mage, the fastest path to the certificate ran through one place, Alpia's Magic Academy, the kingdom's Great Five. There was a catch: Alpia's doesn't take commoners, full stop. Vincent's excitement crashed the second he heard Magic Academy, then crashed harder at the word class. His son, a mage, it sounded like a dream until Austin laid out the wall. No noble blood, no admission. Then Austin said there was a way around it. I would like to adopt Shiren. Vincent just stared. What? The family laid it out plain. The only way to make me a noble was paperwork. A bastard cousin nobody claimed. My name slotted in as his under some clerk's stamp. Vincent heard taken away and nothing else. He turned straight to me. What did his son actually want? My answer came out before I finished thinking it. Of course not. I was my father's son and no signature changed that. They tried to soften it, said real parents stay real parents, nothing changes but paperwork. I'd get my dream and a noble name besides. I didn't buy it. If changing fathers was the price, I'd rather stay a commoner. Austin played his last card. Commoners don't get into magic academies. No academy, no mage. Fine, I said, then I won't become one. He exploded, called me stubborn, said the world isn't fair, said you give things up to win. Was my dream a waste then? Maybe so. But every dream I'd had, I got from the two people who raised me. If parents are the roots, I said, I'm just the fruit that grew off what they fed me. Learning my letters, getting one shot at the Austin library. None of that happens without the roots. This one noble title is nothing next to the chances they already gave me. Asking me to cut them loose was asking me to die. Thanks, but my only parents are standing right here. That's when my parents dropped to their knees in front of Austin. Please adopt Shiren, they begged. I froze. Austin actually looked torn, said my feelings mattered too. Then Vincent said the last thing I ever expected to hear out loud in that room, that I wasn't his biological son. The room didn't move for a second. Everyone had just heard it again, that I wasn't his biological son. My parents were back on their knees begging Austin to take me in. Then the silence broke. Vincent, someone shouted, what are you saying right now? Turned out the truth ran deeper than paperwork. My parents can't have children, Vincent said flat out. I came to them by chance and by his own logic that made me noble blood, too good for a woodcutter's house. He said he didn't deserve a son like me. People around us admitted they'd already guessed. I never looked like my parents. Dad, what are you talking about right now? Austin rounded on Vincent for saying that without asking me first. Vincent held his ground, said he'd suspected the truth for years and stayed quiet so I'd believe I only ever had one set of parents. Worse, he thought I'd buried my dream to spare him. Who said I'm giving up my dream? I shot back, but someone wanted to know something else. What about getting abandoned by family twice? Vincent grabbed me and broke down, saying he'd never meant to give me away, begging me to forgive his lousy excuse for a father. I told him straight he was my everything. Later I caught him talking with Austin, admitting how hard it is raising a kid alone, and Austin didn't argue with that one. What I didn't know yet was that Austin was already working an angle, leaning on someone to call in an old, long-buried debt just to force a shot at Alpia's Magic Academy's special screening. Reckless stubbornness, he laughed, was the only language that worked on the man he needed. My family got to keep our place on the Austin estate because the patriarch stepped in for us. My father still carried guilt over what he'd said, and I could tell it would eat at him for a while. For the first time, Ryan and I actually got to just relax together. Then 3 days later, it was over. Ryan couldn't hold it together when the carriage came. Once he left for the swordsmanship academy, we'd be worlds apart, and he still didn't know if he'd pass his own screening. We swore to write every day and meet on every break. Then he shouted that I'd better become a mage, vowed he'd be the sword that protected me, and my mother pulled me close, promising she'd keep me safe. My father thanked them again and again for everything they'd done for us. My mother looked at me a beat too long, like she was seeing someone different all of a sudden, then caught herself and just told me to work hard, become a mage, and look out for Ryan. My mother climbed up first, my father right behind her, and the carriage started rolling. Ryan came sprinting after it anyway, screaming my name like distance wasn't going to stop him. I leaned out and yelled back, and he screamed one last order after me. Once I got into that school, he wanted me to crush every single one of them. Nobody watching us that day could have guessed it, but that goodbye between me and Ryan, between Arian Shiren and Ryan as it'd later be put, was the actual start of something that would crack the world open. Our carriages split down the road in opposite directions, mine toward magic, his toward the sword, two threads pulling apart before pulling taut again. What I only learned afterward was what it actually took to get me a shot at Alpia's Magic Academy. Ostjen sat down with Headmaster Milch Alpias and got played, 30 minutes of stalling dressed up as consideration, then a flat no dressed up as looking out for the rules. Getting me through that door was going to cost somebody more than gratitude. What I didn't know yet was that two old men were deciding my future over tea. Klump told Milch that meeting his grandson's friend felt like staring at his own younger self. Milch asked why that friend wasn't already enrolled the normal way. One problem, Klump said, he wasn't a noble. The moment blonde hair and blue eyes came up, Milch's whole face changed. I later learned that Klump, Ryan's grandfather, remembered meeting me through his grandson and repeated the vow I'd made back then, that losing my life would still be worth becoming Ryan's friend. He said I talked like I could manipulate adults. Then he told the room something wilder. He'd once tried to formally adopt me into his own noble house. I turned him down flat. Klump warned that people like that end up losing everything, since they never bend on what they believe is right. He asked if it reminded Milch of himself at that age. Milch didn't deny it. He'd carried something he never forgave himself for, and admitted the real reason he still taught children was to keep another kid from becoming him. Milch said the fear out loud. If this boy was really like him, nothing guaranteed he wouldn't walk the same ruinous road. Klump reminded him what that road actually was. Milch had been a once-in-a-century genius, the pride of House Welch, who nearly destroyed himself before clawing his way back to run some academy in a rural backwater. They traded insults and laughed like old friends do. Klump called it fate that this same boy had crossed his path again. Milch laughed it off. He didn't believe in fate. But the talent the status system had shoved away 4 years ago had circled back and was standing in front of him anyway. Then he said the words that decided everything. I will admit Shiren. 3 months later, I was the one walking out the door, off to Alpia's Magic Academy for real. My mother cried into my shoulder, promising to write, panicking over whether my hair looked right. My kid brother refused to let me leave without a goodbye kiss, threatening to just take it himself. My father held on for 1 extra second and told me he was proud. In the carriage, I kept asking why some count wanted to build me a house in the city. My father's answer was blunt. Hunters belong in the mountains, not manor listings, however hard the nobles pushed it on him. I figured the real reason myself, that keeping me close meant no one could use me against him. Then the escort dropped me at the gates, and my first day began. The door opened onto Alpia's Magic Academy, gates and towers rising over the road. The Ostjen butler said my tuition was covered, that all I owed was good grades. I told him I'd never really thanked him for believing in me enough to get me here, and that I wouldn't forget it. Standing at those gates, one thought stuck. Talent didn't matter here. Commoners still ranked under nobles. Milch Alpias, the academy's headmaster, warned me straight. Walking in as a commoner meant plenty of nobles wouldn't warm to me, not for a long while. Persevere anyway, he said, and the end would come. I told him I'd become a mage no matter what, and we walked in together. Rows of cadets dropped into a bow the moment they saw us coming. Milch left me at the gate with a promise to send someone for me, so I killed time reading the class board myself. Rankings ran 1 through 8, top to bottom, out of something like 480 students, and only 10 of them ever climbed to the top. I was still doing that math when a voice behind me said my name outright. The headmaster greeted me like we already had history, reminding me we'd met before I could even ask. I thanked him for everything, and he said we'd talk while we walked. First came the entrance test, the thing that would sort me into a class. Then he asked if I could enter the spirit zone. I said yes, and he actually went quiet. Nobody had taught me that. Something brushed past me in that hallway and I couldn't place what felt off about it. The headmaster showed me the beginner hall first, classes 10 down to 8, and the place opened up bigger than anything I'd ever stood inside. I said wow out loud. Then he pointed further in toward the high-ranked classes 1 through 4 and told me it was a different world in there. Some students nearby argued casually about freezing wind chill points and reverse reactions, throwing around numbers like it was nothing. I finally cracked. Why couldn't I follow a word of it? We spoke the same language. Right then something popped and smoked behind us. A student had blown up her own sound experiment again, and the headmaster barely blinked. She just laughed and said she'd try it again. He didn't even stop her, just let her go blow herself up again like it happened every week. Standing in that hallway full of casual geniuses, one thought landed clean. I really was in another world now. That's when I noticed her, a striking red-haired student walking past with a book under her arm, not sparing me a glance. Every person up there used magic like it was breathing, headed somewhere else entirely. The same overheard argument about freezing points and reverse reactions caught up to me again, and same as before, none of it landed. I couldn't understand my own language. The headmaster laughed it off again, and one thing was obvious now, looking at that castle rising ahead of me. I really had landed in a different world. Then a notice board stopped me cold. Advanced Class 4's rankings, 48 names deep. First place, Carmi's Amy, a first-class noble. Everyone in that hall already matched my talent, every last one of them, and she still stood above all of them anyway. Something in me lit up reading that name. I wanted that spot too. Fine. I'd start from 0 and climb. I wasn't there to see it, but word got around fast. Some red-headed girl went storming after Amy through the halls, yelling her name, demanding to know exactly where the school's untouchable top student had actually learned her magic. Whatever answer she wanted, she didn't get it calm. She screamed that a lowly commoner had no business standing where Amy stood, then kept chasing her down the hall, cursing her name the whole way. Somewhere else in that same school, a boy begged someone not to say they'd seen him. Then he just fainted. Meanwhile, the whole academy had a new obsession. Some old-looking transfer student everyone thought was cute, and a redhead swearing she'd seen him somewhere before. Nobody connected the dots. They called Amy the top student with a dark past only one person alive still knew about. They had no idea that person was walking through their gates for the first time that day. That person was me. They led us into the academy's third testing ground, where new students proved themselves one at a time. Step into that circle, they said, and the markings on the floor would tell the examiners everything about your spirit zone just from what you felt. First up was a kid named Kemi. Could he even use magic? Yeah, he could. Kemi could float objects in the air. Cute enough, they said, then sent him into the zone. He called out the furthest number he saw, 6, which meant his zone ran 6 meters wide, and named red as the color that hit hardest, which marked him divergent. Then they asked if he could spot the distant tower. He could. It was on the left. They kept squeezing data out of him, temperature, density, how far he could flex the thing. Sweat and all, the teachers were thrilled, every new class stronger than the last. Then it was my turn, Aryan Shiren, and before I'd even stepped up, the teachers were already writing me off, some no-name family, some late bloomer they figured would get buried here anyway. I told them straight I hadn't learned magic, not one spell. Magic, Milch explained, was just the knowledge already sitting in a noble's head, forced out into the world, and I had none of that knowledge to draw on. Still, he pointed me to the circle and told me to go in, so I did. Then the whole testing ground lit up. Milch asked me the same question he'd asked everyone else, what's the furthest number you see? I froze, not because I couldn't see one, because I could, and it ran so long I couldn't read the whole thing. He just said my eyesight didn't matter, I'd learn to read it eventually. I wasn't so sure that was a good sign. Brad told me to just say the number rough, whatever I saw. I stared at that string of digits and it wouldn't stop growing. 3.14, I said. The room went dead silent. There's no 3. 14 among the numbers we set, Brad said. Are you sure? I just told him what I saw. That's what I see, I said again. Turned out there's a reason a number like that slips out. My zone was blowing past every limit they'd set, over 30 meters by their guess. An instructor asked what color I saw clearest. Blue, I said. Blue everywhere. That word alone changed the room. Convergent type, someone muttered, way stronger than a zone that size should produce. This isn't any normal talent, the old examiner said. Next test, an old instructor asked how many balls surrounded me. I didn't need to count them one by one, I could just feel each one. 867, I said. He went pale, holding the readout, repeating the number back to himself like it hurt. This is a bit dangerous, he finally said, and that word dangerous stuck with me more than any compliment could have. The number held 867 balls, 38.7% density, numbers nobody in that room had ever needed to write down before. A little dangerous, the instructor said again, like repeating it might make it less true. Then a new voice cut in, asking me something simpler. Cheyenne, how cold is it right now? It's quite cold, I told her. I could feel it in the room. She nodded, satisfied. Convergent type, defense form, exceptional endurance, but a spirit zone still abnormally large for someone like me. Great job, she said, then sent every student but me out so the staff could argue over where I'd actually be placed. In the hallway, I already heard them whispering about what kind of student produces a zone that big. Some of them thought I'd lied, just made up a bigger number to get noticed. Others shut that down fast. There was no reason for a student to lie about something like this, not when it only invited more scrutiny, not less. The argument dragged on past the Class 6 and Class 5 offices, all of it circling one question: where do we actually put him? Athela pushed for Class 5. The headmaster shut it down cold, called me a boy who barely knew magic, said a class that high would leave me stranded. Someone accused her of just wanting me as her own student. Fire and ice sparked between them before Class 10 got floated and killed just as fast. A quieter voice cut through. Class 7, advanced enough to actually teach me without dropping me in over my head. The old examiner finally agreed. Cheyenne would be assigned to Class 7. I didn't know it yet, but the academy ran on 10 classes split into 3 tiers. 8 through 10 taught the fundamentals, growing a zone from nothing. 7 through 4 was the advanced track, learning to actually use that zone and fight with it. 3 through 1 existed for whoever survived training hard enough to be called a professional wizard. Word got around before I even reached the gate. A new face joining Class 7, apparently. I heard the whispers, caught the stares, and just said it straight. I'm Arian Cheyenne, I'll be in your care. Then I was standing inside Alpia's Magic Academy for real, this castle of a school with dozens of buildings, hoping I could actually keep up. Every spare hour I buried myself in books. Alpia's ran on that, students packed into the library or trading theories in the courtyards, chasing the same hard classes. Mine were brutal. I told myself I'd catch up somehow. Word for word, I crammed the whole chronology of history into my head until the morning classes ended and afternoon training began. Someone finally talked to me, still not used to people just walking up. Turned out our combined training ran every week with Advanced Class 4, the school's top-ranked class. That's when it hit me who that meant. I found the training ground already packed, every underclassman fixated on one senior walking in, and I called out anyway. Hey, Amy. Turned out combined training wasn't the only shock waiting. Our Spirit Zone instructor for the term was Romy Athela, official 6th class, and she wasted no time. A new face in the advanced classes this semester, she announced, and every head turned. Then she called on me directly. Stand up, introduce yourself, so I did. Arian Cheyenne, Class 7. I'll be in your care, I said, and immediately wanted to sink through the floor. The whispering didn't stop either. Amy and one of her classmates picked apart my name right there, wondering where I came from, and someone mentioned the instructors were already watching my test results closer than any new students should get watched. That gossip cracked open a memory I don't talk about. Before any of this, back when I was just some commoner, I got cornered and it turned into a real fight. Magic came out of me that had no business being there. Where did you learn that? They screamed. How does a lowly commoner learn magic? All I remember after is one red-haired girl going pale. That girl was Amy, and her family's whole reputation ran on a gift called red eyes. Every Karmi's born with it, reading a person's condition perfectly on sight. With eyes like that, studying was pointless. She already knew the answer. Her father, Shakora, ate it up. Of course, my daughter, genius lineage. Amy just sat there over a chessboard, bored out of her skull. She hated all of it. Family, 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 she said. What has this ability ever done for me? So she ran with a street gang instead, throwing hands for no reason beyond how boring everything was. Then one low-class kid ended her whole rebellious streak and sent her straight home. That kid was me. Amy's eyes locked on me across the room, and I watched her whole face go through it. She figured out exactly who I was. The other students around us just saw new gossip, some nameless kid from nowhere landing in the Nobles Academy. Amy just looked like she wanted to disappear. 5 years ago, before either of us wore an academy uniform, that alley gang with Amy running with them had cornered me and threatened to strip me down just to humiliate me. Now grown up and sitting a few classmates away, she wanted to die remembering it. Meanwhile, the room's real gossip had already moved on. Word was the academy's ice princess used to hang around gangsters. Amy's spiral kept going. She was convinced everyone could read exactly what she'd done to me back then. Somewhere across the hall, a boy caught a random chill down his spine for no reason he could explain. Then the lecture pulled every one of us back to the present. Ethella, the advanced class's spirit zone professor, opened with the real subject, a mage's mentality, given form. Ethella asked flat out what a spirit zone actually was. One of the guys called it right, a mage's mentality made visible. She confirmed it and got specific. The first form is the circle, the shape your focus takes by default. In real combat, though, she warned that basic circle almost never cuts it. She dropped straight into a demonstration, rings of light stacking up around her until the whole room could see her spirit zone with their own eyes, 8 meters across. That's the base circle form, she said, and it's rarely used raw in a real fight. Then she called up a student named Alessio to prove why. A zone 10 meters wide, a target set 20 meters out. The shot ran straight down that zone until it slammed the target and blew it apart, and the room lost it. Somebody cracked a joke about Class 7 watching wide-eyed, but Ethella cut the all short. Changing your zone's shape mid-fight burns through concentration fast, too fast to reset it every exchange. That's why real mages default to 4 fixed patterns: defense, attack, cross, and detached. She ran through them one by one. Defense form built a shield with more faces, meaning more protection. Attack form threw the zone into a star, easy to aim and brutal against a crowd, but it fell apart against fast targets. Push the rotation speed up to compensate, she said, but push it wrong and you'd blind yourself doing it. The last form, detached, she called nearly impossible outside Class B. Ethella called for volunteer to pull it off, and one girl stepped up while somebody muttered about her getting bumped to class for it. She closed her eyes, and her spirit zone left her body completely. The room went dead silent. Nobody in Class 7 had seen a mind step outside its own skin, and I couldn't stop staring at whatever sat at the center of that zone. I watched Professor Ethella keep going. The detached form had no center point at all, she said. Send it anywhere, lock onto a target, and as long as your focus held, the range was basically infinite. The whole class sat there stunned. Then she picked her demonstration partner, Amy Carmes, top of the speed rankings for the cross form. Of course it was Amy again. Up close, though, Amy looked anything but thrilled. I found out later she was screaming inside. She did not want this kind of attention right now, not even a little. I already knew why they picked Amy. She still held the speed record for the cross form, one of the 4 spirit zone shapes. It's built for range, letting a caster hit far without repositioning. The catch is it's brutal to control, and against fast or scattered targets it falls apart fast. I watched her prove why the rankings didn't matter. The cross form needs raw mental power just to keep it spinning that fast, and it's usually weak against anything that moves. Amy erased that weakness on the spot, spinning the zone in place so nothing in its path survived. One classmate next to me said it straight. Even a commoner could tell that technique was insane. 100% hit rate, and she barely looked like she was trying. That effortless calm was what got to people. One guy near me started daydreaming about actually dating her, and his friend shut him down cold. She's a first-class noble out of everyone's league, and she doesn't even look at us commoners twice. Another guy wondered why a girl like that would ever have run with thugs. Then, mid-demonstration, she looked straight at me. It only lasted a second, but the whole room caught it. Whispers started immediately. Did Amy know the new student? She caught herself and panicked internally, cursing herself for glancing my way. I didn't need to hear her thoughts to know what that look meant. She remembered exactly who I was, and now she was sure of it. Amy spent the whole scene panicking inside, telling herself to stay calm since she was the top student, and no one would believe a new kid's word over hers. Her friends just saw her face turn red and asked what was wrong. She swore nothing happened. Then my own class got its real assignment: drill the defense form, the shape that keeps a mage steady under pressure. I just landed my own defense form, though there was no way to prove it since a spirit zone is invisible. So I asked my instructor to let me try the image zone instead, normally reserved for advanced students. He shrugged, figured why not. People started whispering that the new guy had guts. Across the room, Amy caught sight of it and did a full spit take. Amy hissed to a classmate that something wasn't right with me and got Amy, "Why are you acting so strange?" back for it. I didn't hear any of it. I was already walking into the ritual circle, past a hall full of students who'd gathered to watch me try the image zone. The reading behind me sat at 0. I closed my eyes. I was finally about to meet it. My spirit zone answered back bigger than I expected, and the room went quiet with shock, 50 meters wide already. I remembered I'd never actually told them how big it got during my entrance test. Before I could explain, it kept climbing. Someone shouted for it to stop. It didn't. 201 meters and still rising. It barely leveled off in time, which the instructor called good enough, then moved us straight into the defensive form. Mine folded in on itself instead of holding a shape, and I couldn't figure out why. It had worked fine when I practiced alone. Around me, the rest of the class had written off doing well on their first day, but I wasn't ready to accept that answer for myself. I ran the difference in my head, what changed between the image zone and open air, and it clicked. Athela made shifting forms look effortless, so I'd assumed it cost nothing. It didn't. Changing shape burns mental power, and forcing my zone to stay smaller than its natural size was burning it as well. If shrinking it was the problem, I had one move left: let it go back to full size. The crowd flinched as my zone surged past its old edges again, bigger than before. Lightning cracked through the field around me while I held my focus, letting the size run instead of fighting it. Amy stared, completely thrown. Nobody in that room had seen a first-year zone move like this before. 41 meters, the word going around the room now was just huge. How does a first-year even have a spirit zone that size? I knew the real trick wasn't the size. It was folding a field that big back into the defensive form without straining it, and doing both at once. I'd landed all 4 forms on my first day, and the hall knew it. Holding it felt like standing inside a jewel. Milch admitted I'd outclassed a convergent type's defense. Word said I'd outdone the instructors already. Someone asked Amy what she thought of me. I didn't know it then, but behind that smile, she'd placed me as the one who'd humiliated her, certain someone was helping me in secret. That was the moment the whole hall went quiet, 4 forms held at once. And Milch just admitted I'd landed something he hadn't seen from a first year. I break down a new story like this every day, so stick around if you want the next one. I only found out later that Amy had clocked how fast I'd catch up to the top class rankings and how much influence that would hand me, so she scrapped whatever plan she'd had. She decided on a change of plans. She'd have to approach me carefully without letting me see her coming. The instructors were still stuck on my numbers. My zone had shrunk down small, but its density spiked so hard it could shrug off physical hits and start blocking magic too. I didn't clock it in the moment, but Amy was watching me with a look sharp enough to cut, already deciding to come at me carefully instead of head-on. Once I let the zone dissolve, the room erupted, clapping, cheering. Congratulations, I hadn't expected. I just stood there going, why is everyone looking at me? Milch's face said something else. He'd admitted I outclassed what a convergent type should manage, and he was already worried how fast I'd climb. Half the room watched me like competition. The other half watched me like hope. Not everyone clapped. I caught a few tusks, some jealousy I couldn't blame anyone for, and under all of it, Amy's stare stayed locked on me, colder than anything I'd earned that day. The next morning, before I even sat down, I felt another gaze land on me, different from Amy's, sharper, and I had no idea yet whose it was. It turned out to be Professor Sienna Oliver, and the room lost it, begging for gossip about her love life. I knew her differently, the frightening woman from my entrance exam. What none of us knew was she already ran Class 5 and had one real reason for teaching us instead, me. I'll promote you fast, Cheyenne, she said, and I couldn't tell if that was a compliment or a threat. Then she just froze a crystal out of thin air and asked us to explain it. Half the class didn't even know what ice was. One kid started shivering and she told him flat out, if you're cold, it just means you're low on energy. Cold isn't a real thing, she said. Heat can climb forever. It can't drop forever. There's a floor, she said, called absolute zero, where energy hits nothing. Strip energy from a room and you get ice. Strip it down to a current and you get something cold enough to kill, like she'd just done in front of us. We were still processing that we'd nearly died when she pivoted. A mage needs no tools. Inside your spirit zone, you're basically a small god, running on senses nobody else has. Being a god isn't enough by itself, she said. Power without knowing what to do with it just kills whoever's holding it. To trigger magic, you need both halves. God runs on, knowing everything and doing everything. Senses alone don't cut it. You still read the world like a book. That's when it hit me. That was my exact problem. I trained my body omnipotent without learning what omniscience meant. Study hard, she told us, or you'll never become a real mage. Everyone around me bowed, begging her for guidance. I just stood there thinking, I can do this. I can actually become a mage. By the time the sun set over the academy, that thought hadn't left me. Days later, I overheard 2 upperclassmen heading to the library, already grinding for an exam of their own. I started holing up in the library every day, and even then I could barely keep pace with the nobles' lessons. My mind stayed clear anyway because I was chasing something real. Then walking home, my legs felt off, lighter. The ground kept slipping further away until I realized I was flying. Next thing I knew, I was airborne, spinning higher over the trees with zero control. Someone below spotted me and froze, a person, falling straight out of clear sky. Green light flared through the leaves as I dropped and crashed hard. A hooded stranger walking the path noticed me sprawled there, dazed, more confused than hurt. The hood fell back and I froze. Amy Carmey's my own classmate, standing there like she'd already decided something about me. As expected, she said, "It seems like you recognize who I am." Before I could get a word out, fire roared to life in her hand, aimed straight at my chest. "That's right, I will get rid of you here." My mind flashed to Sienna's lesson before the fire even reached me. Omniscience, understanding where magic comes from, sharpened through study. Omnipotence, the will to actually use it, sharpened through discipline. Together, that was the whole requirement magic ever had. That lesson was still chasing me into whatever came next. She stepped closer, flames still crackling in her palm, and said it again like she needed to hear herself confirm it. "It seems like you recognize who I am." Something old was surfacing in me, and she read the hesitation as a yes. "That's right, I will get rid of you here." Then everything went dark. The memory hit clean, gangsters standing over a crying kid, someone yelling, "Stop it, don't kill him." Amy could have walked past. Instead, she watched me cry and admitted some part of her wanted to see more of it before she finally torched the alley to scare them off. Back in the present, her face went white. "Is he the same guy from 5 years ago?" "Of course I remember," I said. Then she flipped the whole thing on me. "You ordered the gangsters to strip me," she snapped, flame building again. I just blinked. "Wait, that's not it, I was wrong." She caught herself mid-sentence. "There's a big misunderstanding. I'm not a lewd girl. Those gangsters wanted to strip you, not me. I never ordered that. Mutasiga did say I wanted to watch, but ignore that, it's nothing." "I was never interested in men to begin with," she blurted. "You kidnapped me to talk about this," I asked. She seemed to catch herself, worried I'd spread rumors about her. So I said it plain. She was the top student in the advanced class, popular, and none of that changed what already happened. "Instead of excuses, why not just apologize?" "Apologize," she repeated, scrambling to get it together. I demanded she apologize for what she'd done to me. She just laughed, called me Sir Commoner, and picked the whole thing apart. Agreeing would mean admitting guilt, and that, she said, put her at a disadvantage. Somehow every version of sorry came out sounding like she was doing me a favor. She could tell I had nothing left to swing back with, and she loved it. She said surviving here without her goodwill was impossible, then leaned in with the real threat, the one thing every student in this academy actually feared: seniors. She spelled it out plain: cross a senior and even the underclassmen turn on you, and if my commoner blood got out, I was finished anyway. So she offered her version of mercy: bring her coffee every morning, and she'd decide if I was worth trusting. She grinned, told me to behave since my whole future was riding on it, then promised to kill me herself if I ran to a professor. I told myself it beat dropping out, but I was angrier at myself for folding than at her. The next morning, I was back at the library gates. I walked the coffee straight through a crowd of onlookers and handed it over in front of everyone. "Your coffee," I said. Heads turned, whispers started. Someone asked Amy flat out what was going on between us, and she turned red trying to laugh it off. I just told her we had studying to do and no time for this. The crowd exploded. Somebody asked outright if I was into her, and Amy waved it off as just disciplining her junior, while inside her head she was gloating about how good it felt to humiliate me. That's when the rumor took shape. Word got around I was secretly in love with her. I panicked. Nobody was going to believe otherwise. Nobody trusted a word I said anyway, so I made a decision. If I was going to be stuck doing this, I'd do it perfectly. 10 days later, the crowd waiting for me had tripled. They called me the Academy's romanticist, swore I'd been confessing my love every single morning. Even Amy had to admit the audience had gotten bigger. Her friends started needling her. When was she finally going to accept me, they asked, with the rumor spreading that far. "Have you forgotten who I am?" she snapped back, mortified. Everyone around us was already calling it the birth of a legend. Then I walked up, coffee in hand, said it plain: "Here's your coffee," and the whole crowd erupted, chanting for her to accept it. I checked the cup twice on the walk over, made sure I hadn't spilled a drop, and told myself I just needed to get through this and reach the library. Then I looked up and saw Amy's face already twisted in horror before I'd said a word. Her eyes locked onto mine, and she screamed the only thing that made sense right then: "Are you kidding me?" The chant caught fire: accept it, until it swallowed the whole courtyard. I just wanted her to take the cup so I could get to the library. She grabbed it, muttering how annoying this was, and before the crowd could close in, I pulled her clear myself. The gasp that followed, Amy, told me exactly how that looked. She smashed the coffee across the stone and tore into me for chasing a girl instead of studying. The crowd booed her. Somebody even pitied me. I bowed and apologized like it stung. What I didn't know then was that she'd already decided this ended the moment she made graduating class. Just like that, she called it off. I threw my arms up the second she walked off, free. No more coffee runs, no crowds. What I only learned later was the story wasn't over for her. Alone in the library that night, Amy sat furious at herself, realizing she'd started the very rumor she was trying to kill. Then she called on her family's gift, the red eyes, and relived the memory exactly as it happened. The red eyes don't just remember a face, they replay the exact state a person was in the second it locked on, down to the smallest flicker. So Amy played it back. Day one handing me coffee, my reaction had been priceless to her. But she kept watching, day after day, all 10 of them, and every time, the look in my eyes never changed. Not even a flicker, she realized. Nobody fakes that for 10 straight days, not unless they've trained themselves like a robot. So either I'd mastered total control over my own face, or every bit of it had been real. That night, her roommate caught her heading out again, teased her about feeling guilty for turning down my coffee. Amy brushed it off, said she was fine. What I never saw was where Amy went next. She ducked into a study room just to be alone and found a noble named Jake Ardius waiting there like he'd expected her. He needled her about the rumor going around about me supposedly chasing her, then held out his own coffee, some rare Western brew, calling it proper treatment for someone like her. Jake laid it out plain. A guy like me was no match for a future royal financial marshal, and he pitched himself for her heart right there. Amy called the joke disgusting, said they weren't even close enough for this. His tone flipped cold fast. He accused her family of working against his at every turn, and warned that disrespecting him meant tarnishing an honor he wouldn't forgive. What I only learned about afterward was that Jake Ardius had cornered Amy alone that night, sneering that Carmi's girl throwing herself at nothing had lost her mind. She didn't flinch. She just looked at him and said one word, pathetic bastard. He laughed anyway, low and ugly, twisting the word honor into a joke aimed straight at her family name. He puffed up, bragging his family's power alone could dry up the Carmi's fortune overnight. Amy just studied his eyes and got it. These weren't tired, harmless eyes like mine. These were a bad guy's eyes, plain and simple. He caught the comparison and choked on it. Worse than my rotten fish eyeballs, apparently, yeah. Jake laughed it off. Wrong order, he said. He should have dealt with the interference first. He bragged he could lock someone like me out of magic for a full day, easy. Then he lunged at Amy to prove how great he was. She didn't just take it. Jake came out of it snarling, arrogant bitch, furious that being pretty wasn't buying her any more patience. Then the courtyard lit up blue and I stepped out of it, red-eyed in mid-spell, casting where it's banned outright. Someone screamed that using magic here broke the rules. Jake just sneered, what's a pretty boy going to do? Amy cut him off cold. Unlike him, I answer for my own choices, and he wouldn't catch me in half a year. That wiped the smirk off him. In my head I ran the math, drop into the spirit zone, and would it just set everything on fire? I couldn't beat the top student in the advanced class straight up, but I could still make him regret it. Jake spat that I wouldn't get away with this and stormed off. Alone after, Amy admitted she hadn't felt this alive in a while, half wondering why she'd even gotten involved. I left Jake hanging off the edge of the building, quite literally, figured he wouldn't be showing his face at school tomorrow after that. Funny thing though, facing him actually cleared my head. A few days passed, and the little ripple Amy had caused kept spreading through the school long after that night ended. What I didn't learn until later was the note that dragged her out that night, some scrawled threat. I have Cheyenne come to the 14th training hall by 6 or I castrate him. Tell a teacher and you'll regret it for life. So that was it. Senior Amy hadn't shown up for me. She'd come to save me. And somewhere past all of it, a black magician was already coming back as a wave. Days later, the whispers hadn't stopped. Someone got tagged as the guy always hanging around Senior Amy. 4 days earlier, she'd been spiraling over the coffee mess, asking how she'd ever hold her head up again. Her friend shrugged it off. Then Senior Churzel came by to apologize for stirring it up, joking love wasn't such a bad word. Amy insisted there was no way, but admitted she didn't hate me. I later learned what set that whole night in motion. Amy found Churzel mid-panic, screaming after opening a note, I have Cheyenne, come to the 14th training hall by 6 or I castrate him for life. Signed, the Black Magician. Churzel hadn't been touched. The threat was aimed straight at me. 30 minutes earlier, some Class 5 underling had cornered Churzel in the courtyard, sneering that his boss wanted to see her, and that refusing meant her man got destroyed. She waved him off, arrogant as ever, until the note hit the ground. That's when Amy rounded the corner and caught her frozen. Amy recognized the sneer behind it instantly. Jake, the same noble who'd bragged he could strip a mage's magic away in a day. Churzel crumpled the note and swore she wanted nothing to do with him. but the messenger wasn't lying. The circle doesn't forgive people who fight back, and she'd struck one of them down the night before. Going to a professor meant a formal inquiry, and an inquiry meant the truth coming out that I was a commoner, and that admitting it could wreck both their standings with the nobility watching. Amy decided she'd rather carry that risk herself than let it become a scandal. Somewhere in the dark, someone was already begging to be let go. Amy told Churzel plainly, if she wasn't back, tell the professor, nothing else. She wouldn't say how many she was walking into, only that 10 Jakes wouldn't be enough to stop her, and she left alone. Nearby, 2 classmates could barely believe it. Amy Carmy's going out alone to save me. Amy had asked her to wait a full hour before doing anything, insisting their secrets had to stay buried. Churzel decided no secret was worth that wait and took off running toward the mountain anyway. A classmate caught up and said running wouldn't get her there in time. He'd fly her in instead. A burst of magic tore across the sky, bright enough that students on the far side of campus stopped and stared, wondering who was casting. That was us. I'd agreed to let a classmate fly me straight there, and I was already regretting it. The takeoff hit like a punch to the gut. We dropped in hard, and I barely kept my stomach in place, but the training hall was empty. We'd beaten the deadline by 10 minutes for nothing. They'd moved the meeting point the second they realized the note's location could be traced. Whoever was running this had planned it too well, and Amy was still out there alone. I told the senior chasing after us to go back and tell the professor everything. She wouldn't drop it. She wanted to know the truth about me and Amy. There wasn't time for that. I said so, and she warned me to stay back, too dangerous. I didn't listen. I'd grown up cutting wood in mountains just like these. I picked up the trail fast, footprints from 2 people pressed into the dirt not long ago. Then they just stopped. No struggle, no drag marks, they were just gone, like something plucked them straight up into the air. My stomach dropped. Don't tell me they already moved her. Then I saw it, smoke curling up from the ridge like something had gone very wrong. My mind raced through the possibilities. Teleportation only worked over short range and could kill you if you hit something you didn't expect. Fly took 2 kinds of magic working together, harder to pull off but steady. Either way, that smoke meant the fight had already started without me. What I didn't see yet, back at the clearing, one of Jake's circle joked his hand had slipped, meant to greet him with fireworks and nearly torched him instead. Then a circle of blue light bloomed out of nowhere, and there she was. Amy had actually come alone. The boss had landed his big fish, and Jake just looked at his crew and said one word, guys. Jake's crew circled her, needling her about coming alone, about whether she cared for me enough to walk in unarmed. Amy shot back that starting a fire wasn't necessary to catch a few people. Jake sneered that a crowd this size would box her in, but she said she hadn't come without a plan either. He didn't care. He wanted to know where I was. Reading, probably. His crew laughed. Amy fired back her own mockery of my books, and they all laughed along like they'd already won. They kept listing scores to settle, one guy claiming she owed him for something last night. Amy just said phew, thought to herself that without me there this would be simple, and let her magic flare red around her. She said it plain. She just needed to get rid of them all. One of them said no way right before Amy proved him wrong. Fire and water tore through their line at once. Someone screamed Elian's name as he went up in flames. Their formation was too weak for a real fight, and their leader knew it, barking at everyone to smother the fire and hold position. Then a wall of water hit, and even he never saw that coming. Here's where it got stupid, the good kind. One of them went up in a blast that ended the fight for him right there. Amy didn't stop. She pulled more water and wind into a spinning wall that picked another guy up and threw him straight through it. Her grin went wide, eyes glowing, and she asked one question, on whose watch? Then columns of light came down like judgment. I didn't see this part myself, I only pieced it together after. Up on that ridge, Amy was still going, torching one of Jake's circle mid-swing, blasting another off his feet. They couldn't keep up, kept asking each other how a first year could switch attacks that fast. Then something moved in from the tree line to back her up. It was the red-haired noblewoman, the one who'd once sized me up like she was pricing me for sale. She caught the enemy's wind cutter cold, blade screaming through wind, and dropped him in one motion. I got you, she said, calm as anything. He screamed how, she just grinned. It's called a schema, brat. A fire strike came screaming down, and she was already gone before it landed, the guy cursing at nothing but dirt. She walked through the wreckage of Jake's circle like it bored her, telling one groaning kid he'd wasted his life on stupid games and it had twisted him rotten. When he tried to talk back, she cut him off. Stop looking down on me. Then she stopped holding back. Purple lightning tore off her, a shape none of them recognized, and she started laughing, screaming for more while they dropped one after another. One of them groaned they'd only been sent to catch her, not fight whatever this actually was. Nobody there had a plan for that. That's when somebody sprang the real trap. Checkmate, one voice said, and green light locked around her, choking off her spirit zone completely. Anti-magic forbidden, and everyone there knew it. Even Amy, watching from a distance, couldn't read a thing off it with her red eyes. The noble woman went rigid, caught, and the man behind it grinned like he'd finally landed her. He toyed with her after that, dangling a deal she wasn't taking, warning her he'd rather get impulsive if she answered wrong. She warned him right back, mess with me and you die. But without her spirit zone, the threat didn't land the way it used to, and somewhere in that helplessness, her mind dropped into an older, uglier memory. In that memory, she was younger, pinned down, told to beg and tremble for a chance at mercy, unable to fight back with her own body. Some part of her recognized the feeling, wondering if this was what someone close to her had already lived through. Then a voice cut through the memory, screaming for it to stop. The one screaming was just a kid, some prince, walking up alone with nothing but a stick in his hands, calling the men holding her bad people. They laughed in his face, asking what he thought he'd do with a stick. She looked up at him like she couldn't believe he'd actually come. Cherzel caught me before I reached the clearing. "You idiot," she said. "Why come alone?" She had a point. 6 of them still had Amy boxed in and no backup was coming. I didn't need to win, I just needed to buy time. I told them to let her go. They laughed and closed ranks instead. Then the air around me changed, and even they felt it. My strike landed and one of them screamed. Then the laughing started. They'd wanted me close the whole time. "Cancel your spirit zone," one of them shouted. "This is anti-magic." I didn't get the chance to refuse. It hit me anyway, and for the first time I felt what I'd only ever watched happen to someone else. My senses started fading. My consciousness felt like it was cracking apart piece by piece. But anti-magic doesn't destroy a spirit zone, it just ripples through it like a stone dropped in water. So I stopped panicking and started building instead. Pack the zone dense enough, hard enough, and no ripple gets through. That's the whole trick. "Is that freshman?" someone near the trees said, like it was an insult. Cherzel was already yelling for me to pull back, too many of them to take. I wasn't listening. "I need a stronger frame," I told myself, and pushed harder. The zone around me sharpened into something crystalline. One of them swung and just stopped. "Being deflected," he said, and he didn't sound smug anymore. "You want to get swallowed by your own anti-magic," one of them sneered. "Ha," was all I said back. Then I let the zone go all at once, and it didn't just push back, it swallowed them whole. "Don't come closer," someone screamed. "Save me," another one begged, and for a second none of them sounded like the ones who'd been laughing a minute ago. I still didn't know exactly what had broken, only that it had. "Spirit zone," Cherzel gasped. "I can feel it again," and lit her hands with fire like she couldn't believe it worked. One of them stared at the ground under his own feet, calling it cold and hard, like standing on something small and alive. He shook it off fast. "No way," he said. "There are 6 of us." "He must have some anti-magic specialty condition," one of them muttered. "That's why they let him into this academy on special terms." Their leader wasn't worried. "Think you can beat me in an actual magic fight?" he said, and came at me with everything. "I don't know any magic," I thought, and ran at him anyway. He grinned, already picking where to cut me. I got there first. Somewhere behind me it turned into something else. The red-haired noblewoman, free of the anti-magic that had caged her, had her former captor on the ground with blood on her hands, screaming that he was done for. "Senior, calm down," Cherzel and the blonde one kept begging. "You schema and he'll actually die," one warned. The man on the ground just kept pleading, "Please," while nobody could get her to stop. She bowed and called me senior, thanking me for saving her, still barely standing after what the anti-magic did to her. I told her she didn't need to thank me, she'd worn herself out trying to save me first. She waved that off, declared herself 50% refreshed, and swung her staff to prove it, reckless as ever. Fighting in that state made 0 sense to me. Cherzel had already run off and reported the fight to one of the teachers. I told her I'd asked her to do exactly that. The teacher pushed back, telling me mages need to explain everything logically, that holding pieces back risked exposing secrets of my own. Before I could answer, a massive burst of blue light tore through the trees, and we both took off running toward it. 2 of the academy's fiercest teachers dropped into the wrecked clearing, and I heard people groan that we were finished with both of them here. Amy ran straight to me, asking if I was hurt. Then one teacher let loose fire, son, a blinding advanced blast, and when the light died down, Jake's whole circle lay scattered and unconscious on the ground. One teacher knelt over an injured member of Jake's circle, asking how someone so promising ended up like this. Another turned to me and asked me to explain what actually happened, since I'd apparently been the one in danger. I stepped up and told them I'd handle it myself. I could lay out the whole story. Every face in that crowd turned toward me, waiting. I told them straight this started as a duel. Jake had come after me over a personal grudge, framed like it was just another age-old rivalry between students. One teacher wasn't having it. Whoever struck first back at the library didn't matter, she said. Nothing excused turning anti-magic on fellow students, no matter how anyone tried to frame it. The teacher laid it out in front of the whole faculty. Jake and his circle were the real culprits here. Jake sneered back and raised the stakes, threatening to leak the whole mess to the regional papers and drag every one of our names through the kingdom's newspapers rather than back down. Before he could finish gloating, a voice cut through the crowd. "Don't act so cocky, Jake." Whoever had spoken laid out the real charge. Jake's circle hadn't just misused anti-magic, they'd used it meaning to actually hurt people, and that alone was grounds for expulsion. Jake just laughed. He reminded them his family's money kept the academy running and dared anyone to actually try expelling him. In his world, he said, everything bowed to money in the end. Before Jake finished gloating, that voice answered him. There was something he needed to learn first, and a vortex of ice magic tore open and swallowed his whole circle at once. Their screams ripped through the clearing. Students around me were shouting that you can't just kill students, but the attack didn't let up, and Jake went down screaming with the rest of them. Sienna's ice hit Jake's circle and didn't even touch their clothes. That's the gap between raw magic and real control, I thought, watching them crumple. He begged her to let him go, called it all nonsense, and she buried his circle in ice anyway. Then she said the line that mattered. This academy wasn't built on anyone's money. It taught things money couldn't touch. Someone near me could only ask what that power even was. Sienna's answer was simple. To dream, she said. Wasn't that why every one of us fought to get this far, to become mages, to chase that dream alongside friends? Jake's circle had trampled that dream with their own feet, and she wasn't pretending otherwise. What came after I only heard about later. Jake called her teacher, and all he could manage was sorry. He and the rest of the black magicians went through the punishment room after that, paying for what they'd done piece by piece. It hurts, they complained. Barely a scratch, came the answer, and in the end the outcome was exactly what everyone expected. The teachers wanted to know why none of it got reported right away, and why Amy had gone off alone with a boy outside her class in the first place. She caved and gave them a version of the truth. Cheyenne, she said, was her boyfriend. The whole room lost it. 2 names got thrown around during that fight worth breaking down. Ice tornado fuses wind and ice, spinning an air vortex then chilling the vapor until it freezes solid. Fire sun fuses fire and light into an artificial sun, brighter and longer lasting than plain light magic. Both are fusion work most mages never touch. It started with Amy alone in a garden, screaming for anyone to hear her. The hooded circle around her weren't interested in mercy, telling her this was what she got for turning down their offer. Then I dropped in behind them. She said my name like she couldn't believe it. I gave her the only thing that mattered. I'm here, Amy. That one moment turned into a legend by the next morning. Students were squealing about how romantic it was, swearing they'd seen it themselves, and Siriel was right in the middle of spreading it. Amy rounded on her, demanding to know what rumor she was running now. By sundown, the notice boards had it in writing. Amy threatened to end Siriel right there for spreading it, but Siriel swore she'd witnessed the whole thing, kiss included. Turned out there hadn't actually been one, so even the rumor mill had to walk that part back. Then the story rewound to days earlier, to someone insisting they'd met me when I was young and figured we'd cross paths again. Fate, they called it. I didn't see this part happen. Amy told me about it after. Her friends wouldn't drop the story, teasing her over lunch about the fake dating cover we'd agreed on, needling her until she snapped that she hated the whole thing. The rumor was already crawling through campus before I even noticed. The seniors cornered us in the hall and leaned into it hard, cooing about how married we looked. I kept my voice light, called her my senior, nothing more, and peeled off for class before it got worse. Behind me I heard her stammer my name, caught off guard. Something felt off the second I walked in. I caught the tail end of it, a classmate sneering that I'd only gotten by on looks, too busy dating to study. That was why I still couldn't cast. Turned out it had started 2 days earlier, in our own classroom. In a different classroom entirely, kids I'd never met were already picking the story apart. Then someone pulled up the midterm rankings and pointed at the bottom. 30 points, dead last, every subject. That number was about to do more damage than any rumor could. From there, the story wrote itself. I'd supposedly written my family's name in, spread genius rumors myself, chased a rich girlfriend while everyone else grinded for their future. I could practically hear how personal it had gotten. Somebody out there had decided they could never forgive me for it. Back in the present, I stepped into class and it had gone dead quiet, way too quiet after how loud it had been. I didn't need to ask why. They wanted me to hear every word. What actually worried me wasn't the talk about me. It was Amy getting dragged into it. Then practical time started, spirit zones, every class together. I threw my zone into the practice ground and it came out massive, big enough that a classmate griped I was crowding his. Professor Athela came over when I admitted the detached form wasn't working, like my mind was leaving my body. She said that tracked. My convergent zone followed nature's shape, a circle, so forcing it apart took manipulation I didn't have. Then she asked about the other forms. I told her honestly the other forms weren't giving me trouble. Wrong thing to say. Professor Sienna's whole face lit up and she asked if I'd demonstrate it in the image zone, right then, in front of everyone. I barely got out pardon before I saw the class already lining up to watch. Professor Sienna didn't ease into it. The debate form is difficult, she said. My convergent zone locked to a plain circle, no room for artificial shapes. But when I claimed the other three forms gave me no trouble, she smiled and told me to prove it right now in the main zone in front of everyone. I'll try, I said and asked for her feedback. Around me, Class 7 muttered that I just wanted to look useful. They weren't wrong to wonder. Switching cleanly between all four forms was one of the requirements to get out of Class 7 for good. I called up the defensive form. It held. The whispers didn't stop, they just changed shape. The attack form came next, a clean star burst, then the cross form right behind it, no stutter between them. Somebody watching me clocked it immediately, faster switching than half of Class 6. Then I reached for the detached form. I'd never landed that one, that was fine. I needed the professor to watch me fail to get anything useful out of her. The detached form has to survive apart from the caster's body. Mine didn't. The farther it drifted from me, the thinner my grip got until it just came apart. I tried again. Gone, faster this time. Somebody asked if I still called myself a genius. I went again anyway, and this time my zone didn't fail quietly. It started shaking, growing, throwing light I'd never shown before. Something in my head asked why people enjoy watching someone else fail. Did everyone in that room actually want me to fail? Maybe I really didn't belong here. Then another voice cut through it, flat and impatient. Stop wasting time on useless thoughts, it said. Stop hesitating. If you want to do something, just do it. You came here to become a mage, didn't you? The voice asked. I froze. Who said that? Then I caught myself because it didn't matter. I came here to become a mage. That was the whole answer. The zone around me blew out bigger than anything I'd shown all day, and every face in that room went from smug to stunned. My zone screamed against itself, ready to either break loose or blow apart, and then everything went white. What came out of it was a formal report. 6 students had turned banned anti-magic loose on someone, ruled improper, banned in school. Reading it after, Sienna noted I'd stood against that anti-magic without my defensive form even up, and wondered how anyone survived 6 at once. What I only learned afterward, Sienna told another professor I'd pulled off the detached form 4 seconds before it vanished, a month into learning all 4 forms. Just talent, the other professor asked. My read on him was right, Sienna said, and floated, stirring up the rest of the class. They were already thinking the same thing. Days later, an ordinary chemistry lesson in Class 7 wrapped up like nothing had changed. Athela called my name in the middle of the closing ceremony and told the entire hall I'd been moved up 2 classes, straight into Class 5 starting tomorrow. The room went dead quiet, then furious. Someone shot up screaming an objection. How does a student who can't even use magic get promoted past everyone else? Athela turned to me and asked if it was true I couldn't say I couldn't. I just said it straight. Yes, I can't perform any magic. That answer split the room. One voice screamed he'd never accept it, called it discrimination outright, while another shot back that spirit zone control was supposed to be everything in magic. The jeering kept coming, someone swearing I couldn't even follow theory lessons, another threatening to drag the student association into it. I stood off by the window taking it, sensing there was more to this than grades. Sienna finally stepped in, promising a real answer after the staff met, but somewhere in that crowd, someone was smiling like this was only the start. What I only found out later was that Maria, a classmate, cornered Sienna alone after the assembly. She had something to say about everything that had just gone down, and from the look on her face, it wasn't going to be small. Maria laid it all out. For a week they'd frozen me out, then started spreading lies and sabotaging my studies outright. Sienna had seen enough of it herself to be furious, calling it flat out cowardly. She thanked Maria and told her to leave the rest to her. What I didn't know then was how far back my own answer to all this actually went. It went back to a line I'd read in an old scholar's memoir, Thorkelin's, insisting 6 hours of sleep was necessary even for a genius. I didn't buy it. Night after night I sat alone under moonlight, forcing my eyes back open, running on 4 hours because a letter from home had told me plainly, endure it no matter how the nobles look at you. Endure it to the end and it ends, that was the whole lesson, and I held on to it. I wasn't doing this for myself alone. Vincent, Amy, Ryan, everyone who'd ever believed in me, they were the reason I kept walking toward the graduating class building that night. No matter who stood in my way, I was becoming a mage. Then out past the gate, something was already watching me. Whoever was watching didn't stay a mystery for long, just a huddle of masked figures somebody spotted from the walkway, and the whisper was at them, like everyone already knew who that meant. Before I could chase that thread, Sienna showed up at my door that same night. She turned down tea and got straight to it. My scores looked strange to her, low everywhere except near-perfect marks in every subject. Sienna visited me in my room and noticed I studied like I was trying to memorize everything twice over. She asked if school was really okay. I told her the truth. I didn't hate my classmates, even though not one of them in class 7 had become a friend. I told her somewhere in this world someone had to understand me, even if the whole of class 7 looked down on me. She took that in quietly and promised to bring it up at the staff meeting. What I only learned afterward was that meeting turned into a fight over me. One professor pushed to advance me fast, arguing it was better for the school to graduate a discriminated student early. Headmaster Milch pushed back. My talent wasn't the problem, he said. My total lack of magic was, and ignoring the other students' anger over it wasn't fair. Then he said the real issue was Sienna playing favorites with me. Milch kept going. Skipping me ahead would gut the other students' will, he said, and no school exists to prop up one genius. That was too much for Sienna. She and a professor named Thad lit into each other with open fire and lightning right there in the meeting, until Milch laughed them both back into their seats. Milch called it down the middle. Both sides had a point, he said, and the school couldn't keep bending around me. Then he came up with a fix. The next morning, the whole of class 7 crowded around a notice board, and I heard the noise before I even saw what they were staring at. The notice offered every one of us in class 7 a shot at an early advancement exam, magic theory included, one winner skipping straight to class 5. Someone read teleportation off the list and the crowd deflated. That wasn't a first-year trick. It hospitalizes geniuses who attempt it. The hallway split open as I walked through to read it myself. I stood there rereading it while everyone around me argued that if teleportation was really on the test, nobody was passing this thing. Not without years most of us didn't have. Nobody looked at me. Nobody needed to. I already knew whose name this exam existed because of. What I only learned afterward was that word of it, that I'd been getting bullied, had climbed all the way up to the older classes and turned into gossip. Amy heard it before I could tell her myself, and she took it badly. She was already storming off to find whoever had done it, swearing she'd make them pay. The rumor about me and Amy had reached the upper classes, and I only pieced together what happened next afterward. Her friends pushed her to patch things up by coaching me through teleportation training. She waved it off, too buried in her own exam prep to bother with me, until one of them laughed that if I couldn't manage that much alone, I wasn't worth calling her boyfriend. Then night fell. I wasn't there for this part, I only pieced it together after. Amy cut through campus alone after dark, wind ripping leaves off the trees, telling herself over and over that she wasn't doing this for feelings, only responsibility. Then something cracked and flared in the shadows ahead of her, and she froze at what she saw. I didn't even have my eyes open before someone yanked the blanket off me, screaming she'd come to beat me up. It was Amy. She froze the second she saw my face, and I froze right back. Before either of us spoke, Sienna stepped out of the dark, teasing that this explained Amy's nightly visits to the men's dorm. Amy sputtered it was all a misunderstanding, terrified the next room could hear every word. By morning it was tea, not panic. Sienna asked why Amy had come so early, and Amy admitted she'd heard how bad my class had gotten. Sienna poured tea I complimented, right before someone snapped that I had no right praising anything after letting myself get humiliated like that. All I could do was apologize. Then Sienna asked, flat out, why I'd never told her about the bullying, and admitted the teleportation test worried her too. Sienna admitted the exam was the headmaster's call, not hers, and she was trusting he had a reason even as it ate at her. Amy asked point blank if teleportation was really that dangerous. Sienna laid it out. The spell runs on light, on something called the absolute speed, magic fast enough to outrun time and space by turning your body into light itself. Get the math wrong and collision doesn't just hurt you. That's why the Academy banned it outright. Watching Amy and Sienna lean over the table, laughing like old friends while I sat there ignored, I couldn't help wondering when those two got so close. Amy asked how anyone even survives an exam that dangerous. Sienna said simply, somewhere with nothing around to hit. Amy scoffed that no such place existed. Sienna's answer was one word, it does, and named a stretch of open air strung between two mountain peaks, a bridge nobody could really cross. Sienna laid out the rules, reach the far side, you win. They'd rated the site safety level 1 like that reassured anyone. If the competition turned desperate, though, students would start colliding on purpose, and I could end up the most targeted person there. I asked if I could really do this. Sienna admitted she'd wanted me in Class 5 since the entrance exam, blamed her own selfishness, and told me to take the exam anyway. Amy cut Sienna off. No, she said, from today she'd teach me herself. Sienna asked why she'd go that far. Amy said she felt responsible for how brutal this exam had gotten and wanted to actually help. Sienna warned it could backfire, word getting out that a professor tutored me would tank my results. Amy held firm anyway. Then Sienna dropped the real bombshell. Amy had already applied for the graduating class, and the room went wide-eyed. The graduating class was the dream every student envied, the fast track into professional ranks, though it came with brutal training and non-stop competition once ordinary school life ran out. Amy was the first of us to step into that fight. When Mark scoffed we weren't ready, she rounded on him instead of me. Watching her take heat that should have been mine, my temper started climbing. Back in my room, Mark needled me anyway. How about you choose, Cheyenne, me or the professor? I froze up and Amy cut in flat. Of course you'd rather have your girlfriend teach you, right? His smile went thin. I'll just do it myself, he said, and both girls yelled it right back at him like he'd lost his mind. Right after Mark stormed off, the reminder was still sitting in front of us. The bridge that can't be crossed, an exam built on nothing but the math of light itself. Jokes about who'd tutor me didn't change that math. In 30 days I'd be standing on a bridge rated for the worst if my speed calculations were off by even a fraction. Back with Professor Athela, she laid out the cold truth. No money, no connections, no private tutors like my rivals had, and the whole class already resented me for jumping the line. Class 5 was just a stepping stone, she said, not the finish line. Amy stepped up anyway. I can't promise I'll pass, but I won't regret it, she told her. Athela relented. I owed Amy for that one. Once Athela left, the room went quiet and awkward between me and Amy. She asked plainly why I'd been avoiding her. I admitted the bullies were watching my every move and I didn't want to drag her into it. She wasn't buying it, so I gave her the answer. Ever since I got to this academy, she'd been the name I was chasing, the rank I wanted to beat. Seeing my name listed above hers on the ranking board, Amy couldn't hide how much it stung. To think I lost to a brat like you, she muttered, and I could hear how much that offended her. Then she caught the fake modesty in my voice. You call me senior with that warm smile, she said while running me down like a coward. I didn't have a comeback for that. Stop calling me your senior, she snapped, daring me to race her head to head where she could actually watch me try. Fall behind, she warned, and I'd be calling her senior for the rest of my life. Amy, I thought, stunned at how fast this had escalated. Just you wait, I told her. I'll catch up in no time, and I meant it. I couldn't even face her after that. I knew the bullies were watching everything I did, so whatever came next I'd have to handle alone. 1 month, that's all I had before the early advancement exam. The next day after lessons, I headed into the city for my first tutoring session and found out I wasn't the only one reaching for that spot. About 20 of us had applied. Mark had applied too, and that thought alone made my stomach drop. I'd promised myself I'd learn teleportation solo, but the application was the real wall. In the real world, the terrain never sits still, so every jump meant calculating light's value in the space between and under 20 seconds. Class 7's kids had tutors and money for that math. I had neither. What I only learned later was that while I was drowning in the math, Mark had already found his answer, walking those fields with a question I recognized all too well. Then the light tore open around him, a perfect teleportation cast. The headmaster looked stunned. You're truly Ed Sullis's son, he said, worthy of the Mage Association, Master Mark. Mark just shrugged it off. Turned out Mark had an officially certified Class 4 instructor quietly assigned to him. He jumped 2 grade levels almost overnight, cramming just the exam slice of teleportation, not the whole theory. The staff watching him were baffled, since he looked like he was just holed up with books, teaching himself, no outside help in sight. It's not like he can learn everything from books, one muttered. I didn't have much time left and no confidence to spare either. I dragged myself out to the Class 7 training grounds after dark alone and told myself there was no other way but to just try it. I called up the theory of photonization inside my spirit zone, felt the space bend, and knew what I had to do: erase the me standing in between. It's working, I thought. It's actually activating. No human brain moves fast enough to calculate light's value in real time, and that was the trap everyone else was stuck in. But I didn't need the math. My zone let me sense everything at once instead, and the second I stopped calculating and just felt it, the whole thing lit up and let go. That was the trick nobody else had. You don't outmath light, you outsense it. With that cracked open, all that was left was time. The clock started ticking, 13 days until the teleportation exam, and every single one of them was mine to spend getting this right. 9 days out, and I was already the strange rumor in every classroom, whispers about somebody training without a single paid tutor. Fine by me. My first real attempt at teleportation blew up in my face, so I wrote down exactly what went wrong and decided the only fix left was to just keep throwing myself at it. That one left me flat on the ground, gasping. My knee was the problem that time, off by 0.02 microseconds, and that was the whole exam right there. It was a stupid method, throw my body at the same jump again and again until it broke, heal, and go again. But it worked. My mind couldn't do the math fast enough, so I let muscle memory do it instead, all the way down to the last day. With the exam bearing down, I kept dragging myself back out there every night, gasping through another failed attempt. Every mistake I fixed just uncovered another one waiting under it. There was nothing left to change now, it had to happen. I forced myself back up and screamed at my own body to get it together. I had to do this. Teleport light tore open in front of me and pulled me through it whole. I hit the ground hard, but when the pain faded, I realized it didn't actually hurt. I'd done it, but lying there wasn't an option. I needed to know how far I could push this, and I still had to practice linking one jump into the next. I didn't see it happen, I only heard about it after. That same morning, Mark stood over the academy grounds while his butler asked how he felt. Great, of course, he said. Today was the day he expected to climb the ranks for good. 200 meters was nothing, he'd clear it easy. I heard later that Mark had cornered Maria that same morning. Hey Maria, did you give up on the exam, he said, and she flinched. It had to be him. Caught skipping training just to bother her, he laughed it off, called himself no loser who studies, said watching better people was study enough. She wished him luck anyway. Then he cornered her for real, grabbing her jaw. She'd been testing whether it was really him outside the teacher's office, and he'd caught her at it. Strange move for a shy girl. He'd only been nice to her as a classmate, he said, but once he was her senior, what did she think would happen? She just shook. Look forward to it, he told her. I didn't know it then, but Mark already had people in place. 2 cronies would latch onto me the second the exam began. A third would cover his back, 2 separate chances to make me fail in the first 10 meters. He paid them with promises of a tutor, a guaranteed pass, favors through his father. That was why he'd wanted me gone on that cliff before I ever fell. The fog broke right as I reached the site, and what was under it wasn't ground, it was a cliff, the one they said couldn't be crossed. My whole year had shown up for the final, more of us than I expected. Class 5's crowd loudest of all, already picking who to mock. Class 4 and 6 filled in behind them, and the judges took their seats up front. Someone teleported in first, light announcing the start. 10 minutes, a woman called out, that's all we had left. I lined up at the mark with my stomach in knots, staring at what should have been a bridge and finding nothing but open air. It was barely a cliff, someone muttered, until another voice pointed out the thread of a bridge crossing it. Behind us, a red-haired classmate was already picking her spot to watch us fall. Mark's crony went looking for me first thing that morning and came back empty-handed. Mark didn't take it well, snarling out a flat what. When he realized I wasn't around, none of them knew why yet. I'd trained straight through the night on that cliffside, and when I finally woke up, it was to my own voice screaming a question I didn't want to be asking. What time is it? Word spread fast. While I was still catching my breath out in the woods, my classmates were already asking each other where I'd gone, and nobody had an answer. He's nowhere to be found, someone said, passing it along like gossip. I didn't know it yet, but that whisper was about to turn into a countdown ticking over my own head. What I found out later, one girl at the cliff had already guessed it. Could it be he failed to learn it? Another snapped back, you can't teach yourself teleportation. That was the exam. Sprint to a cliff edge with nothing below it and cross the gap by teleporting, or don't cross at all. Someone asked about safety devices. The answer was blunt, give up if you're scared. The instructor didn't soften it. Deaths happen in every process at a magic academy, she said, and this exam existed to sort who was ready for Class 5. Anyone unsure should walk away now. My classmates froze solid. Mark didn't. While everyone else panicked, he was already smiling, already writing me off. Well, I guess he's failed, he said. What a bastard. He wasn't wrong to hope for it. He just didn't know why yet. Back at the cliff, the exam started without me. We will begin the test, the teacher called out. Meanwhile, I was still sprinting through the trees, lungs burning, legs screaming after a night with nothing left in the tank. When I broke into the clearing, every head turned. I forced the words out between gasps. "I'm sorry. Can I still take the exam?" Someone spotted me and shouted for Amy to look. "Amy, over there." Someone on the ridge had watched it all through binoculars and clocked the cuts and bruises. Was I training all night? The teachers argued over extra time. The headmaster shut it down. Taking care of myself was my job, not theirs. One teacher offered me a quiet out anyway. I said I was fine. Behind me, Mark was already giving his own orders. Make him fall within the first 10 steps. I told myself to focus, give it everything, no matter how wrecked my body was. We begin Class 7's early phase promotion exam. The teacher called, hand raised, "Everyone get ready." The stopwatch started and the whole line of us broke into a dead sprint along the cliff path. Somewhere in that pack, Mark leaned toward his crew. "I have a plan," he told them. "Just stick right by me." Light exploded across the field as one classmate nailed her teleport clean, gone and back in a blink. Then the whole exam went to pieces. Bodies shoved past each other on that narrow path, and I watched someone go over the edge, arms flailing for a grip that wasn't there. Whatever plan Mark had, it was already working on somebody. A clock ticked down somewhere. 1 second, that was all it would take. We'd trained for years, but none of us had actually stood at the edge of a real cliff before. I didn't know if what I felt was fear or excitement. There was only one plan: sprint, then teleport before the ground ran out. 20 meters to the edge and someone screamed he had to go first. Being first didn't matter. Where you teleported to did. One of us went first, screaming the whole way down before the light swallowed him. From up there, the drop looked bottomless. Then another jumped, teleport flaring gold and green in midair, and a third right behind him. 3 seconds gone, 5 meters before my own group even started moving. Mark's backup crew folded before they even reached the edge, one of them bailing at 3 meters and calling it his limit. Mark screamed after them that they were the guardian group, that they couldn't just quit. "Cowards," he spat, alone now and breathing hard. Even he froze 2 meters out, some part of him asking, "What if I fall?" By then it was just me still running, and I could hear them thinking I'd lost it. Why isn't he stopping? The two left behind us were staring down a drop that had already swallowed everyone ahead, sure they were about to join them. 1 meter to the edge. Not yet, I told myself. I still had to catch up. My foot left solid ground. I didn't stop at the edge. I went 2 meters past it, out over open air. I heard the gasp behind me, saw the professors and older students go rigid, someone stammering that I'd just jumped off. 4 seconds gone, and I was Aryan Shiren, committed, with nothing under me but the fall. Falling, I remembered a friend once asking how I was never scared, not even in the swordsmanship finals. My answer from a year back in the Austrian library: fear is just imagination of dying, but you don't die from falling, only from landing, so think past that instead. He just gawked. "Are you stupid? You die if you hit the ground." That wasn't my point. "You'll die the moment you jump," he'd insisted, refusing to see the difference. Maybe he had a point about the fear, but falling for real now, the only thing that mattered was staying conscious. The instant my spirit zone broke, it was over, so I held onto it and to the plan all the way down. Then the light broke loose, a column of gold tearing up out of the fog, and it launched me past everyone who jumped before me. I heard someone shriek what as I shot by them midair, disbelief in their voice, asking how the last one off the cliff had just overtaken all of them at once. The math had just changed. The whole cliff erupted into cheers behind me, like everyone finally understood what was happening. I found out later Amy told the crowd my start was late but recoverable, that I'd catch up if I kept my rhythm. None of that reached me. All I heard was another kid screaming that his own team had left him midair, and past him, my own light exploded gold and kept climbing. I didn't see it, but I heard after that Mark was still snarling I was ahead of him. What I didn't know yet was why he raced so hard. Years back, a girl named Maria got bullied out of every match until she buried herself in Class 7 for 6 years. She hated competing. She hated being bullied more, so she swore Mark would never get promoted. By the third turn, the field had split into 3 clumps. Up front, me and Mark's team neck and neck. About 3 meters back, the middle pack still finding their nerve. Trailing everyone, the ones who'd panicked and cast too early. One was still falling, telling himself a fall alone wouldn't kill him. Then out of nowhere, a sneeze cut through the whole cliff. One last group kid completely lost it mid-drop, screaming he wanted out of the exam. The examiners just laughed, called it exactly what they expected. Whoever couldn't beat their own fear went first. The scoreboard filled fast. 45 meters failed, 53 failed, 83 failed, 42 failed. Another kid went down screaming there wasn't even a safety net, wondering how far he was actually going to fall. The last group's failures crashed down safe, just humiliated, grumbling. Nobody warned them it'd go like this. Everyone was out. I hit the 200-meter mark myself, chest burning, gasping between bursts of light. Behind me, someone in the middle group was already braking, screaming for a teacher, saying he couldn't push another meter. In my head, I couldn't help it. Idiots, all of them, never gonna beat their own fear. That was the real problem. Behind me, I learned later, Mark was losing it, certain he hadn't miscalculated, watching the gap between us keep growing anyway. He couldn't understand how I wasn't gassed, how a guy who looked half dead at the start was suddenly untouchable. He screamed. I just kept climbing. I had no idea, but on the viewing platform, the teachers were losing it. I ran compulsion over and over, so exact it looked mechanical, while Mark's rhythm fell apart beside me. One old mage just muttered talent like that covered it. The rest argued over where I'd learned to force compulsion, since mages normally convert subconscious into conscious, not the reverse. Nobody had an answer. My limit was closing in fast. Showing this now meant giving away exactly what I was doing, so I held it back. But I was almost out of runway. One shot left, burn every scrap of mental power, and I might pull off something that only worked once. I let it go, and the sky went white. Somewhere else on that cliff, someone felt it and knew. Somebody had just broken their rhythm. I locked eyes with the racer coming in fast beside me and told him straight, sorry, but my future depended on this. My burst crashed into his block, gold light exploding between us. I wasn't stopping. Whatever happened next, we were going down together. I saw it hit him the second he realized I actually meant to charge straight into him. No time to pull back. My burst slammed home and the light swallowed both of us whole, drowning out everything else on that cliff. A second shockwave tore through and I braced for the follow-up hit to land. It didn't, just silence. He'd slipped past me at the last possible second, and I was suddenly falling alone with nothing left to crash into. He'd actually dodged it. I tumbled through open air, lungs burning, dragging in breath after breath. This is really bad, I told myself. My magic was already running on fumes. I can't faint, not now. Focus, I screamed inside my own head right before I hit. I only learned afterward how it read from the platform. My flight path looked broken, wrong, like I'd panicked mid-exam. It wasn't a mistake. One collision killed my speed, the next sent me flying on a whole new line, and someone up there recognized it instantly, Iruki. What I pieced together later was that it used the exact instant of teleporting and leaving space at once, no room for error if you got the reflex wrong. Meanwhile, across the field, Iruki was already celebrating, howling that he'd finished first, bragging he was a genius and everyone should be jealous. Iruki wasn't done gloating. He decided Mark was close to finishing and needed cutting down fast, so he tightened his pace instead of risking a longer jump. Back on the cliff, the real shock was me. Only 2 racers were left, and I was closing on Mark hard enough to leave a watching classmate stunned. I hit solid ground and froze. Something rose off the rock, a black spiral coiling upward like it was alive. Then a golden ring locked around me and I thought I was finished. A warning blared out. The bridge that can't be crossed was arming its engine. Level 10, level 10. I didn't see this happen myself mid-jump, but I found out later. Someone on the platform screamed a number that didn't make sense, level 10. Professor Thad broke into a sprint for the engine room. Staff begged the headmaster not to cancel. 2 ranks of promotions rode on that exam, and every noble family would scream bloody murder. He gave the order anyway. Stop it, now. By the time my beam finally cut out, the test had already been called off without me knowing it. Thad caught the yellow shutdown signal and groaned, already bracing for a mountain of complaints. He found Brad and needled him about drinking himself unconscious again. It was a joke, mostly, but under it I could tell he meant every word this time. I only heard this part secondhand. Thad found the engine room door locked and lit it up with fire, sure that wasn't an accident. Someone shot back from the other side, threatening to bring the whole door down on herself if he backed off. Thad just told her to go ahead, said no one would even notice if she died. Then he knew that voice. It was Maria. Thad demanded to know if she understood what she'd done, that this wasn't some mistake that ended in a light punishment. She screamed back that it didn't matter anymore. If Mark advanced, she'd have to live through hell all over again, so what difference did dying now make? Something in that broke through him. After a long silence, he said he understood. He'd do it her way. Thad backed off, told her if she didn't want to open the door, she didn't have to, that it wasn't even urgent. The exam had already been stopped, exactly like she wanted. But out on the cliffs, Mark was losing it. He'd been one step from advancing, and now some phantom cancellation had robbed him of it. He decided right there he wasn't letting this chance slip. Then it happened. Fire tore across the sky as Mark came straight for me, and someone on the platform screamed that we were both heading into the maze. Below, I heard a woman gasp out a horrified no. The headmaster just stood there watching us go, shaking his head. Foolish brats, he called us. He wasn't wrong. People down on the platform were panicking, asking why nobody was stepping in. Was it pride? Someone shouted for Thad, wondering what he was even doing, then just started yelling for the headmaster outright. I found out later what he was thinking as he watched us fight. He said he thought Mark was different, that if greed blinds your judgment, you'll never find your way to the future. Whatever I threw at him was too fast to fully dodge. I watched him flinch through every exchange, panting, his mental resistance cracking in real time. Around us, the crowd was losing it, saying level 1 didn't mean anything anymore, that whatever I was doing belonged to specialists. Only one of us was walking out of this the furthest ahead, and it wasn't looking like him. I found out later what shaped him. Some professor had drilled Mark for years with one line: agitate your rivals, feed them lies, watch them fall until you're the only one left standing. A warning system once flagged him level 10 for it. That was the lesson barreling toward me now. The professor wasn't lying about the cost either. He'd spent 5 straight years dead last in that same school, mocked as ordinary, until his own classmates schemed to shove him ahead just to be rid of him. He never got over it, and now he was teaching Mark to make sure it never happened to him. Compare yourself to nobody, he told Mark. A real mage erases himself, or he loses his way chasing everyone else. Mark clearly hadn't listened. His strike came in on me and just stopped, blocked cold, and he dropped straight through the maze floor, cursing his own opening move. Mark lost every ounce of his nerve as he fell. Save me, he screamed, while the crowd shouted his name in horror. I didn't think, I just reached, and light caught him before he hit anything. The whole crowd went quiet, then loud. Cheyenne saved Mark, somebody yelled. Nobody watching could figure out why I'd saved the guy trying to kill me. Honestly, neither could I, not with words. What mattered was getting us both out. These traps were an illusion, and the only way through was reading their pattern first. Up, I called. The trap followed us anyway. Dodge. Then it clicked. Going forward wasn't the only way out. Going back worked just as well. The crowd that had been screaming for us to run started screaming for me instead, cheering me through the danger. Somewhere in that noise I heard it. All I'd ever wanted was to be good at this. The headmaster didn't wait for anyone else's permission. Competition's just a tool to reach the finish line, he said, not the finish line itself. It's fine to go slow. He told her to find her courage again, then turned and gave the order himself. Proceed with the exam. I'll take responsibility for all of it. The crowd exploded. Word had already spread that Milch had put his own name behind it, and now every voice on that field was screaming us back into the fight. Whatever came next between Mark and me, it was happening for real this time. The maze wasn't holding still, it moved like something alive, and I couldn't read its pattern. My position was bad because I was reaching for Mark instead of myself. He screamed that he didn't want to die. First, I had to feel the whole structure, then focus on him at the same time. I'd done this before, detached form. I let it go all at once. The light tore through the maze in one violent burst, cracking the whole structure open. Out past the barrier, the watching crowd froze. Amy's mouth dropped open, and for a second nobody breathed. Whatever they saw from outside, it scared them. I found out later Professor Thad watched the whole thing. Danger's supposed to push a mage until he's satisfied and stops. He said I never stopped. My spirit zone density had climbed past 99%, and I ran the entire route in a trance, nothing distracting me. He called it a shocking sight, then he called it an omen. I was still 10 meters short of him, too far for one clean jump, so I didn't take one. I split the teleport down to 10% of its full distance and started chaining it, right, left, right, left, right, left, left, right, left, stitching the gap closed one sliver at a time until the last jump landed. The next trap only let anything move in a straight line, and the space it gave me kept shrinking. Fine, I split it again, smaller still, until the beam broke apart into color and bent around the wall it wasn't supposed to cross. Someone watching called it out by name, Rainbow Drop. Light isn't supposed to bend like that. Mine did. Someone in the crowd worked it out loud while I was still inside the maze. Split a circle into infinite pieces and you get a straight line. That's what I was doing to the teleport, 1 part in 1,000. Not calculation, feeling it. They called it insight, the opposite of a genius who solves everything by numbers. Amazing, they kept saying. I never heard it. Then the shape resolved and everyone outside saw it at once. This wasn't a maze, it was a dragon's head, alive and massive, and people were shouting that Thad had built it himself. Somewhere inside it, Mark came to for a second, bloodied, mumbling that he needed to remember the pattern. Even half-conscious, he knew what he was looking at, a monster. I kept working the route, left in a circle first, while somewhere above me, Mark begged to be spared. I didn't know it yet, but Professor Sienna had just found Professor Thad and was screaming to shut the device down. The exam had never actually ended. Mark and I were still logged inside the live test. The professors broke into a run, shouting my name. I fell out of that blinding flash, weightless, sky and ground swapping places. Amy screamed my name so hard the others had to hold her back. Somewhere below me, that shape was still there, patient, watching. I didn't know yet if I'd made it out or not. Someone swore. Professor Sienna and Professor Thad were already moving, and Professor Athela came sprinting in, calling my name like she already knew something was wrong. What none of them realized was that everything that mattered had already happened a full minute earlier. A minute before any of that, I was still in the air, falling straight into the thing that was about to kill me. I told myself to relax. I was still alive, so I made myself think, and inside my head, everything slowed down to 1/10 of a second. In that stretched-out sliver of time, I mapped 6 turning points, 9 possible jumps including my way out. Then I hit a wall. The fastest route only worked if I left Mark behind. I couldn't take that path. I needed another way, and the clock in my head was still running. Amy screamed my name again, and up on the cliff even the headmaster went rigid. I burned everything I had into one massive teleport pattern, lightning branching wherever I told it to go. It hit like twin explosions. Students scattered back yelling that it wasn't possible. I just slammed straight through the maze. I got out somehow, tumbling down through a trail of my own broken rainbow light before I slammed into the ground. My head was empty. I didn't remember any of it. Somewhere behind my eyes, the system spoke anyway. The bridge's failsafe disarmed, level 10 cleared, the real bar for the advanced class. I'd really thought I was about to die. What I pieced together after was that Mark and I crossed the line at the exact same moment, so nobody could just call it for one of us. The professors argued over who even had the authority to decide, and the headmaster just stood there a second too long before he said anything, like I'd cracked open some old family gift of his he called the light. What I didn't hear was the headmaster admitting quietly to feeling something close to greed watching me, jealous of an ambition he'd buried in himself a long time ago. In public, he kept it simple. The person who passed the test was Arian Shiren. The crowd went off, but somewhere behind them, someone new was already muttering about slider magic, like my getting out wasn't the whole story. What I found out after was that word reached all the way up. Milch stood in front of his own old mentor and took the blame himself, called himself mistaken for ever doubting what I could do. The students who'd schemed against me lined up too, confessing on their own, bracing for punishment. All that mentor gave back was a tired laugh. I hope you do better. The crowd kept buzzing while Amy groaned she just wanted to sleep, and Siriel screamed that it was so cool. Then it was my turn. I called out for Amy, reached for her hand, and asked half out of my mind if I'd kept my promise. She grinned through tears, swearing she'd catch up to me soon, while everyone teased her for getting jealous. I didn't remember any of it. The system finally confirmed it. I'd advanced to Class 5, but standing there afterward, something felt off. I was sure my synesthesia, the sound-based reading I'd trained alone, had been chasing me the whole fight. So why did it feel like it never caught up? Had it actually missed me inside the dragon's maze? A disciplinary committee got called over the maze. Maria owned every bit of it and asked to be punished, but I refused, and so did Mark, and so did Brad, the caretaker who'd been under sleeping magic. The other students realized how petty they'd look staying quiet, so they started confessing too, dragging out their own schemes against my exam. It all blew wide open. Milch stood up and said he'd take responsibility too, admitting he'd ignored the pause signal and let the exam push into the maze, putting the whole school at risk right along with me. His own old teacher, presiding over the tribunal, just laughed under his breath, watching pride and jealousy finally crack into honesty, then banged the gavel to open things properly. One of my professors couldn't believe she had to file paperwork punishing nearly everyone, mine included. When she asked why I went into the maze after the stop signal, I told her the truth. I just didn't want to lose. Solving it was the only thought in my head, and past that, I barely remembered anything. Another teacher grinned, calling me an interesting kid. She looked stunned. But saying I didn't remember wasn't quite true. Some nights it came back anyway, the roar of the dragon's maze swallowing me whole, someone screaming my name, and that voice in my own head screaming back, more, focus more. I felt myself glowing, felt my own eye burning, and somewhere in that light I understood exactly what I was doing. I was erasing myself on purpose. Cutting myself into smaller and smaller pieces, scattering across everywhere at once, because that's what the world actually is underneath. Countless points, no single fixed self. That was the trick. I didn't move faster through the maze. I stopped being just one me trying to move at all. I became infinite. Then the light broke apart around me and I dropped, spent, back into my own body. A piano note drifted through the window and pulled me out of sleep. I'd fallen asleep again over the same notebook, still forcing myself to memorize it line by line. I told myself to just stay with it. Then I heard Amy call my name outside the hall. She'd brought a girl along, apples in hand, thanking me for something. "I don't mean to be rude," she said, "but you seemed like the type who likes apples." I did. Turned out she'd scribbled the word for apology right next to apple in her notes. She caught me noticing, went red, and bolted for class. After that, Amy sailed through her advancement exam easy, though something in that giant brain of hers still wasn't solved. A month later, the Class 7 kids who'd once sabotaged my exam were saving me a seat daily, like I was their mascot. Then a new voice cut in asking for seat 2. Senior Serial needled me about looking lonely without my girlfriend around. I told her she was the one who couldn't stand being apart from Amy. Then the real shock landed. Amy wanted to become a soldier. Thormia was peaceful now, but if war ever came back, the kingdom would need soldiers as much as mages with a specialty. A new voice cut through the teasing, needling me for tensing up. That was Need, the friendliest face in the room. Need told me flat out he was really the only one in class who'd bother talking to someone as awkward as me. His grade sat in the middle, but he had one freak trait nobody else did: full control over lightning. Made sense. Everyone in Class 5 had some edge like that, and this group felt older than Class 7 even though we were the same age. Then they dragged me in, yelling for my verdict on something they couldn't agree on. The question landed like a bomb: Professor Othello or Professor Sienna, who do you like more? Need didn't even hesitate. Team Sienna, and the whole group lost it. Somebody joked both professors just brought out every adolescent boy's protective instinct. Then it swung to me. My whole plan for the year was getting along with everyone, so picking a side felt like a trap. Both of them earned my respect, I said. Choosing one was a lot. The group scattered the moment he walked up. Turned out it wasn't my dodge that scared them off, it was him. "Iruki," somebody called, and a green-haired guy strolled over asking what had everyone so worked up. Just the usual arguing over which professor's prettier. "This is Iruki, Class 5's outlier. First time you've met, right?" The second his hand touched mine, I placed the voice. "Stop hesitating. If you want to do something, just do it." "You came here to become a mage, didn't you? Who was he?" "It's you," I said. "Thanks to you, I finally pulled off the deviate form." He just looked at me and called me the boring type. Before I could ask what that meant, Need laughed it off, said Iruki always talked like that, and it was somehow meant as a compliment. Then Iruki turned and walked off, skipping the main class entirely. Too much bother, apparently. He's a genius, they told me, just stuck in the wrong area. That part I believed. Word spread fast. Iruki was heading for the image zone again. Someone joked he'd better not strip down and lie on the ground like last time. Then he jumped, and it was fast, faster than anything I'd seen from anyone in Class 5. Blue light tore open around him in a spiral, and the crowd went dead silent. "That's the deviate form," someone whispered back already. I just stood there thinking, every time I see it, it's fascinating. I thought no one else in the kingdom could pull off what I'd just seen. Right before blue targets started blinking to life over the crowd in the middle of class, a teacher screamed for Iruki to stop. He just said, "Ignite." Everyone scattered as the light detonated. The blast tore through everything, and I screamed as the wind ripped past me. Iruki just laughed, said, "See you around, Shiren," and walked off like it was nothing. The teacher chewed him out for causing chaos mid-suspension, but I couldn't stop wondering what his deal even was. Iruki was Class 5's biggest weirdo, no social skills to speak of, but there was a reason he was a genius. His transcript said it all: perfect scores in math, physics, earth science, chemistry. Zeros in literature, dignity, history, ethics, savant syndrome, they called it. Iruki could calculate conditions at 6 million degrees or name the date 40,000 years out. Then a professor shoved his literature exam back at him for turning a poem about falling leaves into a physics answer. He didn't apologize. He said there wasn't anything numbers couldn't explain. The professor's face went dark red, then blue, the kind of fury that blows blood vessels if it doesn't stop. He screamed for Iruki to get out. Iruki screamed right back, said he'd already gotten a 0, so what did it matter? Need stood there staring at him like he'd just watched something impossible, in awe that anyone his own age could be that certain of himself. A couple of classmates asked me to join their teleportation research group. My name would help their credibility. I turned them down. My own work wasn't there yet. Afterward, the gossip stung, like that group was above someone like me. Then Haruki cut in and said he ran his own research group too, president and all, though he admitted, almost embarrassed, he only had 2 members and was still recruiting. All the seniors had graduated, Haruki said, so the group's leadership just landed on him. He asked to see my research list, surprised I'd never shown interest in one before. I admitted I was interested, just worried I'd be dead weight. He shrugged that off, said a research group was just people having fun and studying together, then walked me somewhere he called our lab, a storage room, he said, named Usta's. I could look forward to it, right, of course, he said, already lost in another wall of equations. That explosion move he'd used earlier, ignite, finally made sense. It was a trigger spell that detonated outward from a single point, and running it in deviate form made the blast weaker the farther out it spread. Controlled through a spirit zone, it was precise. Lose that control and you were caught in your own blast. The room was called Usta's, cutting-edge storage that could summon anything you'd stash the moment you needed it. Other groups had circled it for years, Haruki said, but his seniors fought to hold on to it, and now he could use everything inside however he liked. I asked if that was even legal. He just grinned, said rules bent for the right people. Simply put, nobody could find us in here. A hideout right where no one would look. Haruki threw the door open and called it our research lab. The sign reads science of supernatural spirits, ghosts, souls, the afterlife, hell, gods, everything logic couldn't explain. I figured I'd joined the wrong group, but some part of me was curious anyway. Then something cracked behind us and I nearly jumped out of my skin. Get used to it, he said. The trick wasn't wiping the mess off, it was cleaning it up after. Turned out Haruki's group stayed anonymous on purpose, notorious enough he couldn't tell me who was in it beforehand. His angle on the supernatural was the opposite of the sign. He wanted to disprove it, not chase it. At the board he broke atoms down past anything class ever taught me, hunting the energy hidden underneath. Enough of it, he said, to level a whole city. I asked him straight, people get hurt if that energy gets loose. He didn't deny it. I reminded him what the headmaster drilled into us, that a mage has to weigh what his ideals cost the world. He called me boring for it, said other mages avoid this power not because it's wrong, but because they can't. I told him a genius who hurts people isn't a genius, he's just an idiot with better math. A handful of geniuses lead a mass of idiots, he told me, and nobody needs to prove it, that's just how the world works. I hate idealism, he said, your logic's built to lose. Then the talking stopped and we were grabbing each other until the others hauled us apart. Sprawled on a couch afterward, I caught someone saying my numbers had spiked to 60. Apparently that was the highest anyone had ever clocked. What I only learned later was that Haruki cornered Need, our lightning-quick classmate, and picked apart what I'd done crossing the dragon's maze. Cutting through it, he said, takes timing down to a 10,000th of a second, faster than any conscious thought. That's insight, not effort, and no calculation beats it. Then he turned it on Need. What if it were you? Calculation versus instinct, staged for the coming speed gun test. 2 weeks to the speed gun test, and another failing grade meant no advancing. The rules were simple, brutal. Cast active magic, hit the targets, rack up a score. Healers and support types got to compete too. Clear every target to move up 10 points first stage, then 11, then 12, and it all rode on fast, clean hits. Only problem, I still couldn't control active magic, and casting at that tier needed a base level of 60. You're not being teased, Professor Sienna said. I understand exactly where you're stuck, pulling from everything you know at once, missing the focus a specialist has. That's when it clicked, the photonization theory, the same magic that turns a body to light for teleportation. I'd never pointed it at anything active. Magic built out of photons, I liked that already. Then she handed me a journal, a new discovery, photon output, my first active magic. Are you sure about this? I asked. I could sit the exam, sure, but I doubted I could pull it off. On the surface it looked useless, she admitted, but photon output had real potential. Light is the fastest thing in the world and the easiest to control. Cutting-edge mages were betting it would reshape how information moved. Fine, I said, I'd master it early. Then I reached for it and nothing happened. No way, could I not even control this? At training I kept working the same trick. Magic never comes out of my hand, it comes from my spirit zone, but picturing a photon leaving my palm helped me command it anyway. Then a woman stepped up to greet the class and the room went dead quiet. Something was wrong. Professor Athella's robes, but no glasses, and none of us recognized the face underneath. Turned out she hadn't stopped being our professor, she'd just come straight from bishop duty. Athella was one of 12 bishops guarding the world's holy relics, carrying the title Jonin, given only to the strongest spirit zones alive. One classmate practically melted on the spot. With the speed gun test 2 weeks out, she promised every class its own lesson, and today's meant borrowing a senior from the graduating class. The senior she'd brought in was Sanjal, a Kardama mage, and just being introduced had half the class whispering he was already out of our league. Kardama magic channeled the power of actual words to enhance a spell, and instead of explaining it, he said he'd rather show us. He raised his hand to cast the most basic tornado spell there was, and I felt the air shift wrong. The tornado tore through and everybody flinched, some of us more rattled than we wanted to admit. Sanjal said that was the spell at plain strength, then told us to watch him enhance it with Kardama. He closed his eyes and started reciting something like a prayer to the earth itself, asking to borrow its power, word by deliberate word. It was about to take him 3 full minutes just to finish. 3 minutes of chanting bought him a completely different spell. The second tornado hit hard enough to actually lift someone off the ground screaming, while the rest of us grabbed for anything solid. Sanjal explained it. He wasn't just reading the words, he was pouring real intent into every one of them, and that intent was what scaled the magic. The catch was obvious. Nothing that takes 3 minutes to say survives an actual fight. So he showed us the workaround, the same incantation compressed into something almost too fast to follow, words blurring together as he ripped through it in seconds. He called it the supersonic technique, and when he finished, that tornado hit exactly as hard as the 3-minute version had. Whatever was left of the training ground afterwards said enough on its own about how much he'd actually been holding back. Athela thanked him, looking a little starstruck herself at what an actual Kardama mage could do. Then came the relief. We wouldn't be learning Kardama ourselves, it was too specialized for where we were. Instead, she was teaching us something called sequencing, building our concentration by counting numbers with real meaning behind them, the same way Sanjal had put meaning into his words. Then she started counting to prove it. She blew past 100 before anyone could process it, and her zone kept climbing right along with the numbers, past 1,000, all the way to 10,000 without breaking a sweat. Watching her zone grow 4 times over in the time it took to count, I understood the pitch instantly. If pure focus could scale a spirit zone, that hard, disciplined counting alone could rival raw talent. Professor Athela laid it out. Count faster and your spirit zone gets stronger, sharper accuracy, better precision, everything scales up. Sitting there, it clicked. Sequencing might be exactly what I needed to finally land photon output. She warned that focus mattered as much as speed. Later alone, I pushed myself to 1,000 counts in 1 minute and it wrecked me. Doing nothing but counting was brutal. Without real training, I'd lose this fast. Wait, I thought back to teleportation, how it let me feel out complicated calculations mid-cast. Sequencing could work the same way. I broke my numbers into hundreds and counted them off in one sweep, cutting the process down to about 10 seconds. Raising my hand toward the tree line, I said it out loud. Should I shoot it at the tree? Only one way to find out. Photon output, I opened my hand and let it go. Light tore out and slammed into the tree line, blinding, way bigger than I expected. Every head on the field turned. What was that bright light? I just stood there blinking, hands still raised, about as confused as they were. So much for subtle. That thing was way too flashy for a first try. That's photon output, someone said. He must have learned it for the speed gun test. Fast bullet, sure, since it moves near light speed, but barely any punch behind it. Then Sienna came over. Shiren, sequencing actually worked for you. Yes, I think so, I said. Then let's see what you can do against a real target, she told me. Can I try the speed gun tonight? I asked. I'm curious how fast I really am. Finish your sequencing first, then call your target, she said. Yes, I closed my eyes and let the numbers flood in. I already had the speed down, now I just had to learn how to use it. Targets up, I called out. Score 0, 1 minute on the clock. My eye lit up blue and the target snapped into place across the wall. I raised my hand. Photon output, the shot cracked out and hit clean. I didn't stop, casting it again and again, faster each time. Wow, this is it, I thought. This was the first time the magic actually felt like mine. The shot moved near light speed, so aiming and firing happened in the same instant. Score hit 11 with 55 seconds left. Around me, Class 5 muttered, it's like instant activation magic, he hits the second he aims. Sienna watched closely. His sequencing sorts huge batches of numbers and counts them together, she said. That's a modularity technique straight from intelligence magic. An incredible growth rate. Time's up, final score 342, nearly perfect, someone said. Another voice cut in quieter, it only worked because he already understood the rainbow drop too. Sloppy, but not bad for a first try. Sloppy, but interesting, the professor agreed. Then a new voice broke in. Professor, I want to try it too. Iruki, you. The crowd turned. It's Iruki. I don't know how his mind works, the professor admitted. Iruki stepped onto the range, still curious, muttering he wanted to see it for himself. His hand lit blue, a spirit zone rose off his shoulders, and he sent a beam straight up. The crowd around me buzzed instantly. Deviate form on the speed gun. Nobody used deviate form for this, and the targets were already gone. His eye barely moved, one beam bent into a dozen trailing arcs and every target died at once. The crowd lost it, screaming. The board flipped to level 2, score 13, with most of the minutes still left. He wasn't even sweating. He was already saying I'd have my record beaten before I finished watching. Iruki laughed under his breath, tossing out some jab about me getting humbled by a shorty. Then the beam bent harder and the speed spiked again. Amazing, someone said. He wasn't chasing targets with his eyes at all. He was solving for where each one would be with an equation of motion, then hitting the spot before it arrived. Someone asked how a deviate form that small could move that fast. The answer floored me. Iruki wasn't counting in hundreds or thousands, he was counting in millions. The board finally stopped at level 24, score 548. Is he even human? Somebody muttered. All I could think was how was I supposed to follow that? Was it worth watching? He asked, already grinning. Amazing, I told him. Deviate form had never looked like that. Disappointed, he said, grabbing my shoulder to praise the modularization behind my own sequencing instead. Curious how he counts in millions, I was, so he just told everyone. Log. He takes the log of the number and shrinks the unit. The crowd couldn't believe that counted as a real method. Counting in log makes huge numbers feel intuitive, but stack sequencing on top and it turns into a mess fast. That gap was exactly why what he'd done got called savant syndrome, not skill. Can you still beat me? He smirked. I'm not doing this to beat anyone, I said, just a test. He laughed that off as a weakling's line, then told me to drop the idealism if I didn't have the skills. If I win, I said, that proves I'm right. Sure, he said, hee. Then he said it, compared to his calculations, I was a worm. The crowd actually gasped, somebody stammering the word back at him like they couldn't believe he'd said it out loud. Wow, this is, someone breathed, and the whole crowd started eating the rivalry up, calling it the most entertaining thing they'd seen all year. That worm line was still ringing when the test itself got laid out plain. Score was just hits landed before the clock died, 1 minute on it. Every level added targets 10, then 11, then 12, then 13, and leaving even one standing meant no advancing. Worse, each level sped the targets up too. Missed the pace, time ran out, no more targets summoned, and my score tanked for it. I ran the math cold, hit every target clean, no wasted shots, 5 seconds a level. My hand came up and light poured out of it, shot after shot cracking the air. The crowd lost it. Then the zone around me flared bigger, and I let loose again. My score locked at 567, my best jump yet, and the crowd couldn't process it. A week ago I couldn't do any of this. Catching my breath, I looked at Iruki. How's that? He just smiled and said he'd already caught up, then stepped up for his turn. Iruki's spirit zone had shrunk, but it moved faster than before. When he finished, the number came up, 568, 1 point over me, just one. It should have felt like nothing. It wasn't luck, it was aimed. Day after day we kept trading blows on that range, 571, 586, 593, the crowd chanting his name louder each round. That's when the message behind his 1 point margin landed. To beat him, I'd have to calculate every step from level 1 the way he did. The real message hit harder. Iruki didn't even need to go all out to beat me. While I sat with that, his classmates begged him to teach his method and asked his ceiling. He said it was exactly what we'd just seen, then grinned. Unlike him, I hadn't gone all out yet. Get that and keep going. Iruki's friends wouldn't let up, joking he probably counted numbers instead of chewing his food. Then one of them let slip who actually held the real best score on that range. Senior Amy Carmes, 987 points. Word of it was already moving through the city square where Amy herself was walking. Back in the city, Amy caught up with friends by the fountain, all of them buzzing about the graduating class exam, how a high score alone wouldn't get you through. Then the talk turned to me, how I'd been doing, and someone mentioned Iruki was picking a fight with me. The mood shifted fast. Cherzel remembered Iruki pulling this exact move on her back in class 2, wearing no emotion just to provoke one once he won. She pushed Amy to step in for me. Amy shut it down cold, said I didn't need saving. Back on the range, I proved her right, dragging my score up to 700 while the crowd called me an outrageous monster. I only heard about this after. Mark cleared all 10 levels in 10 seconds flat, huffing through his own bragging, insisting he still had something to prove. Across campus, Amy dropped a bigger bomb on Cherzel, even holding the real top score, 987. She admitted she'd lose to Iruki if they ever actually went head-to-head. The gun locked at 701, 1 point behind Iruki. Again, the crowd went off like I'd broken something, but Iruki just stood there, unreadable, while everyone around him muttered the same question. What was his ceiling, really? I didn't know it in the moment, but that was the beat where Iruki broke quietly to himself. I'm certain he told himself, I can't win. Remember that line? The guy who'd shadowed every score I posted for weeks had just privately folded, even as the crowd kept asking what his real ceiling even was. Back in my room, the math got ugly. 3 days until the exam, and I still hadn't found a way past Iruki. Give it up, I thought, it's just a test. Cut the crap, some cold voice in me shot back. I ran through everything I'd survived to get here. Nobody would believe a word of it if I quit now. I stared into a candle flame until I stopped trusting my own head. But Iruki wasn't wrong about one thing: the world doesn't listen to people without power. I wasn't giving this up, so I sat down, cross-legged, and went looking for the one edge I hadn't tried, going past numbers themselves. What even were they underneath? I stopped trying to think my way through it, I just felt it. Numbers kept falling past me like rain while I sank deeper, asking the only question that mattered: how far could I actually count? How far could I go? Then something in that free fall didn't fit. Numbers are infinite, they don't end. So what was I bumping into? Here's where it got stupid, the good kind. Whatever I'd brushed up against tore loose all at once, blue light ripping out of me in every direction. I didn't have a name for it yet, I just screamed. When I came back to myself, I was shaking, not sure if I'd just hallucinated the whole thing. Stress, maybe, but it had pulled at me like something real, and I couldn't shake one thought: numbers might not exist purely for counting. By the time I opened my eyes again, 40 hours had already gone by. The next morning we all gathered at the first combined training ground, the place where Class 5's speed gun test would settle exactly where I stood. The whole school turned out, underclassmen packed in right alongside Class 4 seniors just to watch, and I heard the same question everywhere: why did seniors bother showing up for our exam? Nobody said it straight out, but everyone already knew what today's real main event was. The clock hit 0 and the whispers started. Iruki had led every test so far, somebody said, though another voice cut in, too early to call it. Then I learned something that actually mattered. Since the real test ran in pairs, whoever you got matched against could shift your own score. Group after group ran it, scores climbing on the board behind them, one girl even shouting that she'd won. Then the last group of the day got called, Group 20. My name and Iruki's broke over the crowd together, and the second I locked in, the whole hall went dead quiet. Milch said it plainly: half the school had its eyes on the two of us, and he expected both of us to go above and beyond. Iruki just looked past him, straight at me. I didn't answer. There wasn't anything left worth saying. The signal beeped, and both of us went all the way from the very first move. Targets across the field detonated before the shockwave even finished traveling, 12 down with 58 seconds still on the clock. The crowd stopped cheering, they just stared. Then I watched Iruki's zone actually shrink, and that's when it clicked. He wasn't spreading his power thin anymore, he was crushing all of it into one point. The beam that tore out could have split the sky. Milch called it a performance he'd only ever heard about. Amy just looked at me, like she'd been right to call him strong. Amy's jaw dropped when the board updated. My score had landed higher than his. People started muttering that Iruki was toying with us, holding back to flip it at the end, calling him cruel for it. But for 1 second I caught his real face. He hadn't been playing at all, he'd been going all out since the start. Whatever I'd done these last 3 days, it actually caught him off guard. Athela's voice caught up with me before I even opened my eyes. The same rule applies to counting, she said. Push a habit far enough and the wall starts breaking faster. She said I'd gone farther than she expected. Then my body gave out for good, and somewhere close, someone called me a freak. I don't remember much of what came after. Just white and quiet, the kind of silence that swallows time whole. Something in me had cracked open for good, and I wouldn't understand how much until I was back on my feet. Back on the test floor, my hand started crackling on its own, blue light stacking around my fingers like a countdown running backward. Then the circles broke loose. Whatever this was, the system had a name ready for it: modularity release. I'd never used it before in my life. Iruki caught what I couldn't feel in myself. I was splitting my focus enough to count more than one thing at once, and holding that alone took real hyperfocus. Miss one beat and the sequencing collapses, so I locked onto a single point and let it rip. The board flipped. I was ahead by a mile. Go, Cheyenne, that's what the crowd screamed. I didn't catch it in the moment, but Iruki's face went still. I heard later he called it mental fortitude. Breaking my own routine meant I was staking everything, same as him. Then it was his turn. His hand lit up, glowing on a different scale, and the crowd went quiet. Iruki's score had jumped. Nobody could explain how. Then someone in the crowd screamed it. He has two spirit zones, not an afterimage nor a trick of the light, two running at once, logged and both real. Even with his mind wired the way it was, that kind of split was supposed to be near impossible. Word was Amy had called this months ago. Turned out she'd been right about him the whole time. The board settled at 845 to 692 his favor. This is over, someone said. Shiren's just unlucky. For a second I believed them. I can't win, I thought. I put in everything and it still wasn't half of what Iruki could do. Then the real answer hit harder. I wasn't beaten. I was still afraid, still not sure I was allowed to go this far. But I finished the thought anyway. I was going to go beyond the numbers. Light broke off me in a column, wings of it tearing upward past every limit I'd set for myself, and lightning followed it down. I caught Iruki's face change, just for a second, somewhere between shock and respect. Behind me, Amy screamed my name, and for once it didn't sound like fear. The board flashed it plain, Iruki at 995, me stuck at 892. He grinned like the win was already his, boasting that no matter how fast I moved, he'd outcalculate every number in the world. 5, 4, 3. The countdown chewed itself down, and I felt my own light and lightning tear loose in answer. 1 second left. I told myself I was winning, that I could still take it. Then, damn it, time started crawling. The buzzer finally cut it off and the crowd erupted. Slumped in the chair, spent, I caught the number. 1,247, not bad. I'd actually won right before my body gave out. Amy screamed my name and gasps ran through the room asking if I was even okay. Board updated, 1,253, a new record. Cheers broke out, hands slapping my back, and all I could think was I won. Then Iruki walked up and picked the win apart like a formula, said wide-range magic scores easy since it blankets the whole field, admitted mine wasn't even proper photon magic, and that ate at him. Then he said it outright, congrats, you won. The room lost its mind, 1,253, a new record. And I still couldn't quite believe it was my name on that board. This story keeps going. A new one drops daily, and subscribing's how the next chapter actually finds you. Yeah, you're right, he said, and I asked if he was serious. Explosions aren't violent, he told me. They're just energy, and only intent to hurt makes them dangerous. But whoever controls that much power still has to answer for it, so he had a favor to ask. From now on, he said, you're responsible for me. Iruki just asked me to take responsibility for power like mine going forward, if you had that kind of output. Would you want a rival like him watching over you, or would you rather nobody knew?